Chapter 2938. Puff, puff. However, before the two fifth-step experts could finish, a sixth-step expert attacked. One strike caused the two of them to spit out blood, and were heavily injured. This was because they were fifth-step experts. If they were fourth-step experts, they would have been killed in one strike. Ling Han, White Rice, and Feng Wuting were shocked. What did these three mean? Seniors. The two fifth-step experts coughed out blood. Their eyes were filled with confusion. Why were they suddenly attacked like this? Ling Han's heart shook, and he suddenly reacted. He said to White Rice, "You leave first." White Rice looked at him, and was confused. He was a descendant of seventh-step experts. Although the three of them were sixth-step experts, they wouldn't dare to attack him. One had to know that he had a technique left behind by a seventh-step expert. Once he died, White Rice would know everything. The higher one's realm was, the more they knew how terrifying a seventh-step expert was. These three wouldn't dare to attack him. Fool, they are Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han shouted. He finally realized what was wrong with the three of them. They were Frenzy's creations, and their auras were extremely strange. What? White Rice was astonished. If the three of them created things in a frenzy, then they didn't have to hold back at all. Since they were enemies, it didn't matter even if they killed all the descendants of the seventh step, let alone one descendant of seventh step. What about you? He asked Ling Han. I want to fight them. Ling Han was filled with fighting spirit. Okay. White Rice made a decision and ran. He ran, but the three cultivators at the sixth step level did not chase after him. They merely stared at Ling Han and Feng Wuting, and their auras gradually changed. At first, there was only a slightly gloomy and cold aura, but now it was completely unleashed, and it was filled with endless evil. At the same time, their bodies changed too. Some had a few more arms, some had legs, and one had 7 heads. Frenzy's creations had many unique traits. What was different was that their eyes were shining with wisdom. Without such intelligence, they wouldn't have been able to find this place. They would have been lost in the void. After such a long time, Frenzy finally attacked. Ling Han was filled with heroic spirit. He had just taken 4 steps forward, and wanted to test his combat strength. He shook his right hand and knocked Feng Wuting out, so that this fellow wouldn't cause trouble for him during the battle. He smiled faintly. Are you here to kill me or him? Feng Wuting was the chosen one of the previous generation's origin world. Perhaps Frenzy would also be wary of him. Who knew what secrets were hidden in this fellow's body? It might only be revealed at the 5th, 6th, or even 7th step, which would pose a threat to Frenzy. All of you must die. A 6th-step monster spoke in a hoarse voice, as if he had just learned how to speak. Ling Han pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Actually, I don't care whether this fellow lives or dies. But if Frenzy wants to kill him, I have to save him. He used his great power to shrink Feng Wuting's body into a small dot and put him away. Come. He crooked his finger at the 3 6th-step martial artists. The 3 monsters immediately charged over. Hong. Their terrifying combat strength surged as they crushed toward Ling Han. They were very strong, all at the peak of the 6th step. He believed that Frenzy had paid a huge price to create these 3 monsters. They were all at the peak of the 6th step. Clearly, they were going to succeed. Ling Han shook his head. If he had encountered these 3 monsters when he was still at the 3rd step, he definitely wouldn't have been a match for them. He could only immediately tear open the void and return. Otherwise, if he stayed for even a moment longer, he might die. But now he was confident that he had the power to fight. Hong. He activated all of his 8 stream talismans, and his combat strength instantly soared. He let out a long roar and waved his angry fist to meet the attack. Bang! He clashed with the 3 monsters, and his body instantly trembled. He felt his blood and chi surge, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. However, the bodies of the 3 6th-step monsters also shook, and they were forced to retreat. Fighting 1 against 3, Ling Han still had the upper hand. This was natural, because these 3 monsters did not activate their celestial venerable symbols, and Ling Han directly closed the gap in strength by 1,000-fold. He did not lose even when fighting 1 against 3, but the 3 monsters immediately made a comeback, and a celestial venerable symbol lit up on each of their bodies. Instantly, their combat strength increased by more than 70 times. 2-stream talismans. Thankfully, each monster only activated one 2-stream talisman. If they also used a combination, then Ling Han would really have a headache, and he would be completely unqualified to resist. They clashed again. This time, it was Ling Han's turn to be no match for them. The 3 great 6 steps were strengthened by the 2-stream talismans, and their combat strength increased by more than 70 times. Once again, he had the upper hand in terms of strength, and it was at a crushing level. Ling Han let out a long roar, and 19-dimensional projections were activated at the same time to suppress the 3 6-step monsters. However, it was useless. The 6th step was too strong, and the dimension in Ling Han's body had not kept up with his cultivation level. It was only at the intermediate level, so how could it suppress the 6th step? Pung! With just a shock from the 6th step's aura, these dimensional projections were all shattered into pieces. Ling Han sighed inwardly. If he activated a real dimension, then he could just barely withstand a few blows. But if it was just a dimensional projection, the difference was too great, and there was no effect at all. He retreated as he fought. 1 against 3, and they were all at the peak of 6th step. It would be strange if he could really win. The 3 6th-step monsters closed in on him. They only had one thought, and that was to kill. No matter where Ling Han fled to, they would persevere. No matter who blocked them, they would mercilessly kill them. Ling Han was very calm. Right now, he also had combat strength at the 6th-step level, and it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to kill someone of the same level. He did not intend to fight to the death. However, the peak of 6th step was indeed powerful. No matter how Ling Han changed his form, they could always firmly keep up. No matter what, Ling Han did not shake them off. Time flew by as they fled and chased. Very quickly, 300 years had passed. Although Ling Han continuously used the energy storms here to delay, and even caused the 3 6th-step monsters to suffer some losses, they did not care at all, and continued to chase him closely. Frenzy remnants, take this. With a long cry, 2 figures charged over at the same time. Xian Qihu and Wu Haoyang, the 2 greatest prodigies of all time, had obviously obtained great opportunities here, and their cultivations had already reached the peak of 5th step. But this was the true difficulty. Thinking about how they had all been stuck at 4th step for an epoch before finally advancing to 5th step, it could be imagined that without Crimson Grade Great Medicine, they might need 2, 3, or even more epochs to advance to 6th step. However, with cultivation at the peak of 5th step, coupled with their freaks, their battle prowess was absolutely terrifying. They charged over from the side, and just happened to intercept the 3 6th-step monsters. The 2 sides immediately began to fight, and the battle was incredibly intense. End of this chapter. Chapter 2940. Ling Han. Not long after Ling Han left, he saw White Rice run over. Phew, it's good that you're fine. He patted his chest. How was it? Did Xian Qihu go to save you? Ling Han was surprised. You asked Xian Qihu for help? I met Xian Qihu first, and told him about the situation. Didn't he go to save you? White Rice was stunned. Ling Han shook his head. He came, along with Wu Haoyang. That's good. White Rice nodded. Ling Han was a little surprised. He didn't think that Xian Qihu would come to save him and teach him a good lesson. In another situation, if Xian Qihu was being chased by the Chaos Army, would he help? Ling Han thought for a moment and nodded slowly. No matter how big the conflict between him and Xian Qihu was, it was an internal problem. No matter who won, it wouldn't have any negative impact on the Fiery Frost Plain. However, no matter what the Chaos Army did, as long as they succeeded, they would definitely harm the Fiery Frost Plain. Internal competition was one thing, but there had to be a bottom line. Alright, he accepted this favor. If Xian Qihu fell into the Chaos Army's encirclement in the future, he would help. Come, let's continue digging. The 2 of them walked around, searching for mines and excavating raw stones. They had a great harvest. 100,000 years passed quickly, and it was time for the 2 of them to return. They stepped on the way back, and after asking, they found out that the 6 steps of the Chaos Army hadn't been discovered. They didn't know where they were hiding. If they didn't get rid of them, they would always be a hidden danger. Who knows where they'll pop up and kill us all of a sudden? They traveled through the void, and after a dozen years, the two of them returned to the foreign battlefield. Next, it was time for another group to explore the origin world. The Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming were in this group, but the Empress and Hunyeo had to wait. Ling Yulian also left. In other words, there was no one to protect Ling Han here, and Xan Chihu could do as he pleased. However, it was useless even if Lin Yulian didn't leave. Xan Chihu had obtained great benefits in the previous generation's Yuan world, and his strength had soared to the peak of 6th step, surpassing her. Sure enough, with no one to restrain him, Xan Chihu gave Ling Han many more difficult problems, and made him go to the frenzy camp to continue the decapitation operation. Ling Han, on the other hand, didn't care. His battle prowess had already soared to 6 levels. In this place where cultivation levels were suppressed, he could easily kill his way through the frenzy army. Of course, he couldn't withstand the simultaneous bombardment of tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of 5 steps. Apart from the 7 steps of undying and indestructible, even 6 steps would be blasted to smithereens. Now he wasn't worried about encountering Frenzy in the void. With combat strength of level 6, even Frenzy's doppelganger wouldn't be able to kill him. At most, it would only injure him a little. Since that was the case, Ling Han happily accepted the order and entered the frenzy camp to kill. Killing these monsters couldn't provide him with life essence, but the plain power in Ling Han's body was like a millstone. When he refined and attacked, he could also turn a portion of the power into nourishment for him. It should be known that the most difficult thing for Ling Han to improve his cultivation was the growth of the infinite plain power in his body. Now that these plain seeds could absorb nourishment on their own, this naturally made Ling Han happy. He distributed the great medicine and heavenly venerable symbols he had obtained from the previous origin world to the Empress and the others. Of course, there was also a portion of white rice. Before this area was completely neutralized, the frenzy army obviously wouldn't launch an attack. This was also a rare opportunity for everyone to improve their own strength. Apart from fighting, Ling Han was also constantly cultivating in seclusion. Although the heavenly venerable symbols he had obtained from the previous origin world were getting fewer and fewer, the number of symbols he had mastered had reached more than 300. Under the operation of all of them, his cultivation speed increased by almost 2,000 times. Without needing to care about the plain power in his body, Ling Han's cultivation naturally improved. He was expected to reach the peak of level 4 within 200 to 300 million years. On the other hand, the plain seed in his body, that had evolved into a plain seed, was also developing rapidly. 100,000 years later, the second group returned, and the third group set off. The Empress and Hunyeo were among them. Ling Han warned the 2 women to be careful, while he continued to go to the frenzy camp to fight and improve his plain power. Only 700,000 years later, the plain in Ling Han's body completely caught up with his cultivation level. He was still in the early stage of level 4. If there were 100 steps between the early stage and middle stage of level 4, he had now taken about 2 steps. However, although he had only taken this little step, it increased the upper limit of the number of planes he could accommodate again, reaching more than 200. Now these planes had all reached the medium level, close to the high level. If they were all released in one go, even if it was just a projection, it would be very shocking. The Empress and Hunyeo had already returned, and after 1 million years, it was finally Ling Han's turn to go to the previous origin world. But before they set off, they had to postpone the plan. That was because the frenzy army finally launched an attack. An endless army charged over, the densely packed numbers making one's scalp numb. However, Ling Han did not care at all. He took the initiative to charge out, releasing 20 plane projections in one go. Now these planes were all close to the high level, and even those in the 5th step would be slightly affected, while those in the 4th step would directly collapse. Ling Han shot out a punch, and instantly, thousands of frenzy army soldiers were crushed. Seeing him so violent and strong, everyone was shocked, but also filled with excitement. With a prodigy like Ling Han overseeing things, what was the frenzy army worth? Not only Ling Han, but Xian Qihu, Wu Haoyang, and Lin Yulian also displayed world-shaking strength. Although Feng Wuting was repeatedly robbed by Ling Han and appeared extremely weak, in reality, he was indeed a prodigy second only to Ling Han. His cultivation level had advanced frighteningly, already reaching the middle stage of level 4. Although his battle prowess had not advanced into level 6, he could already sweep away all those in level 5. It had to be said that the previous origin world had really helped them a lot. In this battle, although the fiery frost dimension did not have the help of plane suppression, because of Ling Han, Xian Qihu, and the other prodigies, they had played the role of stabilizing the sea, and they had actually managed to defend their position. Although they had paid the price of more than 100 heavenly venerables dying in battle, and more than 2,000 people being seriously injured, this great victory still made everyone feel satisfied and strong confidence. Finally, they could not only retreat, but they could also stand firm. After this great victory, everyone hurriedly took the time to rest and reorganize. Now that they had not given up their position, it meant that the frenzy army might launch an attack soon. Ling Han's journey could only be postponed indefinitely, so he could not leave now. Sure enough, after a few years, the frenzy army attacked again, but they were forced back. In the past, there were only 3 generals, including Xian Qihu. Now, with the addition of 2 people with battle prowess at level 6, Ling Han and Feng Wuting, they had a huge impact on the battle situation. Chapter 2941. In the next 100 years, the Army of Chaos launched a total of more than 30 attacks, large and small. However, all of them were repelled and could not take another step forward. In these battles, Feng Wuting's performance was the most outstanding. He seemed to want to prove to everyone that only he could defeat the Chaos Army and become the savior of the Yuan world. He went all out in every battle, using his ultimate moves. In the most recent battle, he released 21 planar projections, surpassing the 20 that Ling Han had displayed before. Clearly, he was holding back his anger and wanted to prove that he was better than Ling Han. Ling Han naturally didn't care about this. This kind of competition was the stupidest thing. Strength was the way to go. For 200 years, 500 years, they had defended against the Chaos Army's countless attacks. In the blink of an eye, 1,000,000 years had passed. Ling Han would still carry out beheading operations. Even if they could withstand the Chaos Army's attacks, the Flame Frost Army's casualty rate would be completely different without an intelligent monster to command them. He would bring White Rice, Xianfeng, and Fu Yuan along. With his current strength, he could already guarantee their safety. He naturally didn't mind training them. Feng Wuting was always going against Ling Han. He also formed a beheading team and brought 3 members to kill their way into the enemy's camp. He wanted to compete with Ling Han. However, he didn't have the ability to travel through space. There were a few times when he was surrounded. Although he managed to escape, his 3 teammates all died inside. After a few times, even if he was the previous Yuan world's child of destiny, no celestial venerables were willing to risk their lives with him. Feng Wuting could only fight alone. However, once he was trapped in the enemy's camp, he was saved by Ling Han, Xian Qihu, and the other 2 generals. After that, he never fought his way into the enemy's camp again. It was too embarrassing. Ha ha ha. When this news spread, White Rice, Xianfeng, and Fu Yuan laughed. They had long been unhappy with Feng Wuting. Now that he had made a fool of himself, they were naturally happy. "You want to compete with us? You'll be slapped in the face, right?" said White Rice. He had been defeated by Feng Wuting, and he had been holding his breath the entire time. However, he didn't have an advantage in terms of cultivation realm. In a battle of the same realm, he wasn't Feng Wuting's opponent. "Come on, let's drink." Fu Yuan raised his cup. Ling Han and the other 2 also raised their wine cups. Ding, they clinked. This was not a camp, but a 3-day journey away. Originally, it was an ordinary valley, but now that the 2 plains had collided, it formed a very spectacular landscape. This was discovered by White Rice, so he brought them here to admire it. Since Feng Wuting was here, they decided to drink and enjoy themselves. But then again, Feng Wuding is indeed powerful. If it weren't for Boss, no one in the same realm would be a match for him, Xianfeng said seriously. White Rice and Fu Yuan nodded. They had to admit that. There's nothing we can do about it. He was born at the wrong time to meet our boss. Fu Yuan laughed. Even though Fu Yuan and Xianfeng were both at the 5th step, they were willing to acknowledge Ling Han as their boss. Martial art depended on one's realm, but it also depended on one's strength. Wait for our boss to improve further. After he reaches the 5th step, he will have the combat strength of a 7th step, and no one in the world will be a match for him, Fu Yuan said. Although this was considered flattery, it was also the truth. Ling Han wanted to say something, but he tilted his head and listened attentively. What's wrong? White Rice asked. Ling Han waved his hand and signaled for everyone to keep quiet. After a while he said calmly, "We have guests." Who? White Rice and the other two asked at the same time. Us. Another voice answered. An average-looking person walked over with a faint smile on his face. His eyes were squinted into a line, as if he couldn't open them. Who are you? Fu Yuan immediately stood up. And us, Xianfeng said. Figures appeared one after another, and each of them had an imposing aura. 5th step, 5th step, 5th step. These people were all 5th step heavenly venerables, and there were 88 of them. Each of them gave off a powerful aura. Ling Han looked around. What can I do for you? I want to take your life, the average-looking person said. Ling Han nodded. You are the same as Meng Dong, people who received Frenzy's inheritance, right? That's right, the average-looking person said. The plain-looking man said as he bowed slightly. I am Huang Fudongyue. I have to say that it is a pity that we only met now. What he meant was that if Ling Han didn't betray Frenzy, then they were naturally a family and had met each other long ago. Ling Han laughed out loud. It's not too late to meet now. Ling Han, do you think that you can get away with betraying the main body? Another 5th step said. He pointed at Ling Han and was filled with anger. What? White Rice, Xianfeng, and Fu Yuan were all shocked. From this conversation, it seemed like Ling Han was Frenzy's subordinate, but he had abandoned the dark side and joined the light side. Ling Han was a person from Frenzy. This news was too shocking. If it really spread to the outer region battlefield, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Who dared to use someone from Frenzy? Weren't they afraid that he would suddenly turn against them and stab them? Brother Ling Yu. White Rice couldn't help but look at Ling Han. Boss! Xianfeng and Fu Yuan exclaimed. Ling Han waved his hand. I will tell you about this later. What later? You are going to die here soon. Huang Fudongyue said calmly. Is that so? Ling Han looked at the 5th step celestial venerables around him, and couldn't help but laugh. It's not that I am looking down on you, but in my eyes, all of you are just trash. All of you together are not even enough for me to kill with one hand. Then you can try. Huang Fudongyue said coldly. He then raised his voice. For the main body, our death is just to return to the main body. Immediately, 10 5th step celestial venerables shouted. They all jumped together and something strange happened. They fused together, and their auras instantly increased. They instantly broke through the limit of 5th step and reached 6th step. This caused White Rice and the other two to be dumbfounded. How could this happen? Ling Han had already seen this before, and was naturally not surprised. He frowned slightly. This was the other party's trump card. Frenzy should know that he already had 6th step combat strength. Even if all of these people fused together, as long as they did not reach 7th step, they would not be able to do anything to him, much less a fusion monster. 7th step. That was impossible. Even if Frenzy was a plane, he could not create someone with 7th step combat strength. These people had been undercover for who knew how long. Now that they all revealed their identities, if they did not have complete confidence, they would be extremely stupid. Frenzy would definitely not do such a stupid thing. And these people had true intelligence. Of course, they would not do such a stupid thing. Wait, why did these people suddenly appear here? Chapter 2942. For the main body, another 10 people shouted and then fused together, turning into a 30-meter tall creature with many arms, legs, and eyes. It was a complete monster. There were 2 monsters at the 6th step. More people roared and fused together. More and more 6th step monsters appeared. Ling Han sighed. After these people fused together, they gained frenzy's characteristics. Their life essence could not be absorbed by him, which was a pity, but they still had the celestial symbol on them, which would not disappear. This time, he would not fall for frenzy's trick again. After killing them, he would search their souls. Ling Han, we should all return to our main bodies, said Huang Fudangyue. Right now, only he and the other 7 had not fused together. Ling Han shook his head. Not interested. It's not up to you. Huang Fudangyue roared, and the 8 6th-step monsters immediately charged at Ling Han. The first-rank talisman shone with shocking power. How powerful was a 6th-step monster with a first-rank talisman? Not enough. Ling Han did not care at all. The fused monsters were only early-stage 6th-step monsters. Even with the first-rank talisman, they would only be late-stage 6th-step monsters. Ling Han had completely stabilized his realm. His original power was also early-stage 6th step, and he also had the same first-rank talisman, 9th grade, and 8th grade combination talismans. Not only did he not lose in terms of power, he was even stronger. But the other side had 8 6th-step monsters, and if they worked together, they could still match Ling Han. They were just at a slight disadvantage. Kill! Huang Fudangyue and the others charged at White Rice, Fu Yuan and Xianfeng. The chaotic battle began. Although White Rice was only at the 4th step, he was a super genius that did not lose to Xian Chihu. Moreover, he had reached the peak of the 4th step, and his combat power had soared to the peak of the 5th step. Not only did he not lose to Huang Fudangyue and the others, he was even able to fight 1 against 2. But Fu Yuan and Xianfeng were not so strong. Huang Fudangyue and the others had inherited the first-rank celestial talisman from Frenzy, and with 80 times their strength, they were unable to fight. Moreover, Huang Fudangyue and the rest had the upper hand in terms of numbers. If it wasn't for White Rice's continuous rescue, Fu Yuan and Xianfeng wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. Even so, they were surrounded by perils and could collapse at any moment. Ling Han let out a long roar. While fighting against the 8 fused heads, he flew towards Fu Yuan and Xianfeng. Boom! He threw out a punch and instantly sent 3 5-step martial artists flying, solving Xianfeng's desperate situation. However, Fu Yuan was hit by 2 5-step martial artists, causing him to vomit blood and stagger. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Ling Han hurriedly rushed forward. Although the 8 fusion bodies tried their best to stop him, they still couldn't stop him. He reached out to grab Fu Yuan. Right at this moment, light suddenly shone from Fu Yuan's chest. Xiao xiao xiao. 3 specks of light flew out, and then rapidly enlarged, transforming into 3 human figures. No, they couldn't be considered human figures, but rather 3 monsters. However, the aura that emanated from them was incomparably terrifying. Many hands, many feet, many heads. This is the creation of madness. Furthermore, the aura that they emitted was extremely powerful, reaching the 6th step level. They were even more powerful than the 8 fusion bodies. They were actually the 3 monsters that had attacked Ling Han in the previous Yuan world. Why did they fly out from Fu Yuan's body? Fu Yuan had been coerced. Or when he was unconscious, the 3 monsters were on top of him. That shouldn't be possible. After all, they were still 5th step martial artists. Even if they couldn't defeat 6th step martial artists, they shouldn't have reacted at all when 3 6th step martial artists hit on their bodies. Boom! The 3 6th step martial artists attacked. Each of them activated a second-rate talisman, and their strength increased by more than 70 times as they pressed down on Ling Han. The 8 fusion bodies also took this opportunity to attack. The number of celestial venerate symbols flashing on their bodies instantly increased to more than 10, and their strength increased by more than 400 times. This was a combination symbol. They hadn't used it before because they wanted to numb Ling Han. It should be pointed out that there were more than 100 of them, and each of them had a first-rate talisman. They could completely form a sequence. Now 3 peak stage 6th step martial artists were attacking head-on. There were also 8 lower-ranked 6-step martial artists who had more than 400 times their strength. Their battle prowess had also increased to peak stage 6-step martial artists, forming a pincer attack. This was a trap to kill Ling Han. Everything that had happened before was all an act. It was all for this moment to kill Ling Han. Fu Yuan revealed a cold smile. Based on his understanding of Ling Han definitely wouldn't be able to resolve this. Ling Han! Boss! White Rice and Xianfeng both exclaimed. This seemed to be a dead end. Whether it was Xian Chihu or Feng Wuding, they could only helplessly die. Ling Han's hair also stood on end. There were a total of 11 peak stage 6-step martial artists. Every single one of them was stronger than him. And it wasn't just by a little. If they joined forces, they could severely injure him. However, the more it was in such a situation, the calmer Ling Han became. And he felt a surge of battle intent rise from the bottom of his heart. This was interesting. He let out a long howl. Wang! The dimensions in his body were all released. It wasn't just 1 or 2, but a total of 200. They weren't projections either. They were physical entities. 200 middle-level dimensions that were extremely close to high-level dimensions. What did it mean to release all of them at once? So what if it was 6 steps? Their bodies involuntarily trembled, and their attacks paused slightly. However, 6 steps was still 6 steps. As power surged, the 200 dimensions all began to crack. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ling Han's figure leaped, and he hurriedly retreated. He grabbed White Rice and Xianfeng. Then he tore open space and stepped in. The 200 dimensions entered his body at the same time. Xiao! The void closed behind him. The instant the void closed, Ling Han looked deeply at Fu Yuan. It was as if he was staring at a dead person. Then, he turned around and walked away resolutely. Shua! A black shadow whipped over. It had a terrifying aura that could suppress the ages and destroy the heavens. Frenzy! Heh! It really was one move after another. Ling Han had no path of retreat. If he left the void now, he would have to fight against those 11 6th-level elites again. He let out a long howl. All the 8 stream talismans activated at the same time. He exploded with his full power to meet Frenzy's attack. Pung! His entire body instantly trembled violently. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Even though Frenzy had only sent out a clone, its power had reached the peak of 6th level. It was even more powerful than his subordinates outside. However, Ling Han finally blocked this attack. It was incomparably berserk and ice-cold. Even though its first attack had failed, it didn't show any emotion. It struck out again, its black tentacles sweeping through the void. Its main body was far away in the outer realm battlefield, but its attack was still able to reach Qin Wentian. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ling Han had already taken a step forward. He tore open space again, and was already out of the void. Frenzy attacked again. This attack chased out of the void, and continued to whip toward Ling Han. Scram! Ling Han roared. He punched out with both fists. The 200 dimensions were activated at the same time. They formed an incredibly powerful pressure that finally blasted Frenzy's tentacles back. Chapter 2944. As Ling Han walked, he saw that the people he passed all looked at him strangely, as if he was a monster, and some people didn't even hide the disgust in their eyes. Fuck, did I provoke you? Ling Han and the Empress were fine, but Hunyo directly glared back. What, did they think she didn't know how to glare? Boss! Ling Han! Fourth brother! Xianfeng, the Rain Emperor, and the others all ran over, their expressions very serious. What's wrong? Ling Han said with a smile. If the sky falls down, even if the sky falls down, I'll help you guys hold it up. He was now in the 6th level of battle prowess, so he really had the right to say such words. Boss, something really happened. Xianfeng said anxiously, pausing for a moment before explaining the situation. The matter of you being related to madness has been exposed by someone, and it's spreading everywhere now. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, and he also became serious. There weren't many people who knew that he was once chosen by madness. Aside from his wives, there were only White Rice, Xianfeng, and Zhou Heng. But Ling Han could guarantee that none of them would leak the secret. Then who could it be? It could only be Madness's subordinates like Huang Fudongyue. Sometimes, to eliminate a person, one didn't need to do it himself. Not only was killing with a borrowed knife equally effective, but it also saved effort. It must be these people who spread the news, alienating the relationship between Ling Han and the public, and even attracting the hostility of many people who would attack him. At that time, Ling Han would become a man on both sides and would be hunted by both sides. Taking a step back, being hunted by his own people, would Ling Han be discouraged? Even if Ling Han knew that this was Madness's plot, facing the ugly faces of some people, he would still be furious, and then disappointed in the entire group, right? To what extent, Madness actually wouldn't care too much. Anyway, what it had to do was to let Huang Fudongyue and the others spread the news, and it didn't cost anything. Ling Han instantly went through it in his mind, but had to say that Madness's move was very ruthless. He was certain that he would never listen to Frenzy, but how many of the others would believe him? Ling Han came from afar alone. He first glanced at Ling Han with disdain and said, "The 4 marshals have summoned you for a meeting. Here it comes." Ling Han felt extremely displeased. This person was Feng Wuding's subordinate, and he also came from the previous Yuan world. His strength was quite extraordinary, and he had already reached the 3rd step. He was quite monstrous, but how could Ling Han care about 3 steps? "I'm one of the commanders of the Allied army, yet you're calling me by my name. Are you trying to go against your superiors?" Ling Han coldly stared at him. No matter what happened next, no matter how this matter was resolved, he would not allow his dignity to be trampled on. People needed a bottom line. The 3rd step Celestial Venerable didn't think that Ling Han would make things difficult for him. In his opinion, Ling Han should be extremely panic-stricken with the East Window incident. So where did he get the confidence to rebuke him? He wanted to be arrogant, but facing Ling Han, who was at the 6th step, his heart was beating like a drum, and his courage instantly disappeared. He hesitated for a moment, then cupped his fists and bowed. "I don't dare." "What's the matter?" Ling Han asked indifferently. "Don't you know everything? Why are you still pretending to be ignorant?" However, the 3rd step Celestial had just been intimidated by Ling Han, so he didn't dare to talk back to Ling Han. He could only pinch his nose and say, "Lord Ling, the 4 commanders are waiting for you in the meeting hall." "That's more like it," White Rice said coldly. He had always disliked Feng Wuding, and since he was the grandson of 7th step Celestial Venerable, he naturally spoke without thinking. The 3rd step Celestial Venerable immediately wanted to glare at him, but he remembered that White Rice was the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Though he wasn't as strong as Feng Wuding, he was many times stronger than him. If he took the initiative to provoke him, then he deserved to be crippled. A small fry should have the awareness of a small fry. "Why are you rushing forward? Do you want to be cannon fodder?" The Rain Emperor said calmly. The 3rd step Celestial Venerable couldn't afford to provoke Ling Han's group, so he could only keep quiet. In any case, what awaited Ling Han was a trial, and he would suffer. He indeed didn't need to rush forward. "Lord Ling, please." He made a gesture of invitation. Ling Han ignored him completely. Though he started walking, he wasn't heading in the direction of the meeting hall. "Lord Ling." The 3rd step Celestial Venerable hurriedly rushed over to stop him. Peng the Empress moved and delivered a palm strike. Instantly, the 3rd step Celestial Venerable was sent flying. He created a deep pit on the ground. She had long since advanced to the 4th step, and had the power of 100 existential levels in her body. Even if she couldn't cross a cultivation level now, she had an additional cultivation level. Wouldn't she be able to crush him? Ling Han's steps paused slightly. "I just rushed back and need to rest. You want to interfere with this? Your subordinate doesn't dare." The 3rd step Celestial Venerable could only swallow his pride and anger. He lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred. He was a 3rd step Celestial Venerable, a 3rd step Celestial Venerable that stood at the peak of the world. Ling Han smiled and continued to walk forward. "Want to put him on trial?" He had a clear conscience, so who could put him on trial and sentence him? He returned to his own residence, and the Rain Emperor and the others hurriedly asked if Ling Han had any countermeasures. Countermeasures? Ling Han smiled and said, "Counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir." "Fourth brother, what exactly is going on?" the Rain Emperor asked. He had also heard from others that Ling Han was related to madness. Thus, Ling Han recounted the matter of him being the person chosen by frenzy, and did not hide anything. So Lord Zhou and Lord Lin already know. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Even Lord Six-Step Celestial Venerable already knew about this, so it would definitely be easy to resolve. Tomorrow, it should just be a formality. And Lord Zhou and Lord Chu aren't at the ordinary 6th step. They are only a sliver away from the 7th step, and can cross over at any time. Perhaps they are already at the 7th step now. They only need to say something, and it will definitely work. But we still have to be careful. Someone might take the opportunity to cause trouble and slander little Han, the large black dog said. If someone is, then it must be under the command of Xian Chihu or Feng Wooding. Otherwise, who would have the guts to do so? White Rice asked. Everyone nodded. The ones who would use this matter to make things difficult for Ling Han were probably Xian Chihu and Feng Wooding. The day passed quickly, and it was very peaceful. Xian Chihu and the others didn't send anyone to invite Ling Han. But everyone knew that this was the calm before the storm. The calmer it was now, the more terrifying the storm would be in the future. On the second day, Ling Han didn't need anyone to invite him, and he strode towards the conference hall. Whoever wanted to make things difficult for him come, he would take it all on. When he arrived at the conference hall, he saw that there were already many people here, and Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and the others were sitting on the main seats. A good show was about to begin. End of this chapter. Chapter 2945. Ling Han entered the conference hall and headed for the main seat. He was one of the 5 great generals, so one of the main seats belonged to him. Wait! Feng Wooding suddenly spoke and pressed his hand forward. Ling Han, your identity is currently unknown. You don't have the right to sit here. Oh, if you say that I don't have the right, then I don't have the right. Ling Han looked at Feng Wooding. You've already lost to me. Stop whining in front of me. Do you want to be searched again? Fuck. Feng Wooding's expression instantly became incomparably colorful, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Losing to Ling Han was his only blemish, and he had been robbed by Ling Han several times, which had hurt him to the bone. Now that Ling Han had exposed this scar in front of everyone, he was naturally embarrassed and furious. Ling Han, come and fight. I don't believe that I will lose to you again, he roared. His cultivation speed was faster than Ling Han's, and he now had a slight advantage over Ling Han in terms of cultivation base. Thus his confidence was restored. Come. Ling Han hooked his finger. Whoever doesn't dare is a bastard. Everyone was speechless. We're all heavenly venerables, so can't you speak with some standards? Why do you sound like a hoodlum? Feng Wooding suddenly stood up and was about to attack. Hold it. Xian Chihu reached out to stop him. Don't forget what today's main purpose is. Feng Wooding's heart immediately trembled. That's right, I've almost been led astray by Ling Han. Today's purpose was to put Ling Han on trial for colluding with the enemy. How did I end up getting sidetracked? Everyone slapped their heads. Ling Han's ability to lead the conversation was too strong. Everyone had unknowingly gotten sidetracked. Ling Han, do you have anything to say about the current rumors? Feng Wooding asked Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. Don't change the topic. Let me ask you, why am I not qualified to sit there? Is it you or someone else? Before we get to the bottom of this matter, Ling Han is still one of our leaders. He has a place here. Lin Yulian finally opened her mouth. She definitely supported Ling Han. Wu Haoyang nodded. I agree. I object, Feng Wooding immediately said. I also object, Xian Chihu said. Now it's 2-2. Whose call is it? Ling Han strode forward and sat down on the empty seat. No one has removed me from my position, so I'm still one of the commanders and have the right to vote. He must have voted for him, so now it was 3-2. Everyone nodded. Ling Han was the winner of this round of competition. Feng Wooding glanced at Xian Chihu and saw that Xian Chihu's expression was calm, as if he wasn't affected at all. He gradually calmed down. The loss in the first round was nothing. As long as he could pin the crime of Ling Han as a traitor, then Ling Han would become a street rat. Still a commander? Everyone wants to beat me up, and I'll go down in infamy. All right, before the trial comes to an end, I'll admit that you're still one of the 5 commanders, Feng Wuting said. He felt a little strange. He was clearly more monstrous than Xianqihu, and his future was brighter. Why was he now a pawn waving flags and cheering? Ling Han snorted. Do I need your acknowledgement? I lost to you. Whether you admit it or not, I'm still me. There won't be any changes. Damn it, damn it. Feng Wuting had the urge to kill someone. He clearly had great self-restraint. So why did he explode after being provoked by Ling Han? He took a deep breath. Ling Han, there's a rumor going around that you're Insanity's subordinate. Is that true? It's completely false. Ling Han shook his head and pushed the blame away. It's just a rumor. Who can prove it? Feng Wuting was stunned. You're too casual. You want to stay out of this? He said coldly. Then do you have proof that you're not Insanity's subordinate? Then do you have proof that I'm Insanity's subordinate? Ling Han countered with a question. Fuck. Feng Wuting couldn't help but choke. Was he interrogating him now? Or was he interrogating him? Ling Han, don't try to quibble. He shouted loudly. Quibble your sister. Ling Han snorted. Did you call me over for no reason just to tease me? Are you crazy? Even if I'm really related to Insanity, I'll admit it right here. Also, now I suspect that you're related to Insanity. Do you have proof to prove your innocence? Ling Han countered with a question, his voice powerful. You're trying to slander me. Feng Wuting immediately jumped up. Ling Han chuckled. I haven't even said that you're slandering me. What are you so excited about? Ling Han. Feng Wuting gritted his teeth. He really wanted to charge out. Seeing him like this, and then comparing it to Ling Han's calmness, everyone shook their heads. Although Feng Wuting was the child of destiny of the last origin world, his temperament really hadn't been cultivated to perfection. Ling Han laughed loudly. What? You want to fight? Ling Han. Xianqihu finally spoke up. There's no smoke without fire. You can't solve the problem by simply shifting the blame. Furthermore, if you don't get to the bottom of this matter, who else would believe you and fight alongside you? These words had a certain level of quality to them. They stood at the height of righteousness, and Ling Han could no longer respond with shameless tactics. Ling Han smiled faintly. Oh, how do you want me to prove that if I'm refined by you guys, will I change back to my original form? According to the countless years of experience that the Lords of the 7th Step have had with Insanity's main body, Insanity has the ability to devour life essence. This is also the fundamental reason why it was able to catch up from behind and become the strongest of the 7th step, Xianqihu said. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han. As long as you also have this ability, then you're definitely related to Insanity. He didn't directly insist that Ling Han was part of Insanity, but as long as he could prove that Ling Han was related to Insanity, then it would only be a matter of time before Ling Han was nailed to the pillar of shame. Comparing Xianqihu and Feng Wuting, one could see how shrewd and ruthless Xianqihu was, while Feng Wuting was simply like a child. Come. Xianqihu waved his hand. Immediately a person was brought over. His cultivation had been sealed, and he was only an immortal king at the 8th heaven. Pa! Xianqihu moved like lightning, and with one palm, he blasted that immortal king into pieces. Everyone was shocked. Although this was only an immortal king at the 8th heaven, which was basically trash in their eyes, suddenly killing someone and seeing blood still made their nerves tremble. This is an immortal king who committed a great crime. His death is not to be regretted, Xianqihu explained. Everyone carefully observed that life essence. Everyone nodded and attached their divine senses to that immortal king's life essence. In just an instant, they revealed looks of astonishment. This life essence was like a thirsty horse drinking spring water, and it surged towards Ling Han. Ling Han has the same ability as Insanity. This guy is really an Insanity person. End of chapter. Chapter 2946. Ling Han was a little depressed. Devouring life essence to increase his cultivation was an amazing and practical ability, but he couldn't control it at all. At this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on his body. Even those who were doubtful before had changed, revealing looks of disgust. Everyone despised Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han, what else do you have to say? Feng Wuding said proudly. Ling Han shrugged. So what? It's just a coincidence. How can it be a coincidence? Feng Wuding snorted. Why don't I have such an ability? How would I know? You're an idiot, Ling Han said casually. You. Feng Wuding went berserk again. Xan Chihu waved his hand. Ling Han, you're one of our generals. We won't make a judgment so easily. However, this is a serious matter. You must cooperate with us. Right now we want you to surrender. As for whether you're a Frenzy member or not, the 7th Step Lords will judge. Ling Han looked at Xan Chihu. This guy was really cunning. He wanted to take me down, but he made it sound so nice. It was as if he was thinking for me. Everyone, Lin Yulian said. Those who say that Ling Han is related to the Frenzy, have you ever thought about how many Frenzy soldiers Ling Han has killed up until now? If he really is a member of the Frenzy, why would he do such a thing? Quite a few people immediately nodded. Ling Han had killed who knew how many members of the Frenzy army these years, and at least 1/3 of the intelligence-type monsters had died in his hands. Otherwise, their current front line would definitely have to retreat an immeasurable distance. If one were to say that Ling Han was a traitor, this was really too unbelievable. Haha, otherwise how could he have won our trust? Na Lanxiong interrupted. That's right. The reason why he did this must be because he's plotting something huge. The damage to the Frosty Plain and the Origin world is far greater than the destruction of the Frenzy army, someone added. Furthermore, if it weren't for this layer of relationship, how could he have been able to move about freely in the Frenzy army? Someone else said. Even if it was Lord Xian, Lord Lin, and Lord Wu, these 3 are all stronger than Ling Han, they still couldn't have done it. Let me ask you, if Ling Han could do it once it would be fine. But he has come and gone thousands of times. Is there really nothing the Frenzy army can do to him? Yeah. Everyone nodded their heads. Ling Han was indeed a monstrous genius, but to be honest his battle prowess was still slightly inferior to that of Lin, Xian and Wu. How could Ling Han be able to do something that even the 3 of them could not? Not just once, but thousands and tens of thousands of times? Who would believe that there was no ghost in it? That's right. How did Ling Han do it? They must be working together from the inside and purposely going easy on us. Anyway, the Frenzy army has a lot of people. It doesn't matter how many of them die. It won't be long before they can create a new army. Damn it. If Ling Han continues killing like this, his reputation will definitely increase. If he really becomes our leader, we will definitely die without a burial place. Everyone was talking at once, and everyone was in an uproar. White Rice and Xianfeng were both furious. They were members of the execution team, and they had experienced many dangers before. Didn't they see it? There was indeed a traitor, but it was Fu Yuan. They argued on Ling Han's behalf, but their voices were immediately drowned out by the boiling sound of cursing. Ling Han was not angry. This scene was actually within his expectations. He just looked at Xian Chihu. He had fought with Xian Chihu many times, and Xian Chihu was one of the few who knew his trump card. Fu Yuan could tear space and travel freely between planes, so it was a piece of cake for him to come and go freely in the Frenzy army. But what disappointed Ling Han was that Xian Chihu had no intention of defending him. He was righteous, but they were not facing the Frenzy army now, so no one could blame Xian Chihu for not speaking up. He could just make excuses in the future. Wouldn't he forget about this? Take him down, the crowd roared. They were already in a state of fury. What was the most terrifying thing on the battlefield? Someone stabbing them in the back. Ling Han, if you still have any sense of justice in your heart, then please surrender. Whether it's black or white, we will naturally return you justice, Xian Chihu said calmly. Feng Wuding laughed coldly. Ling Han could no longer turn the situation around. A traitor, an enemy of the Firefrost Plain. So what if he was strong? So what if he had defeated him before? Wasn't Frenzy even more amazing? He had suppressed all the 7 steps by himself. But so what? Who would worship Frenzy? Who would look down on the 7 steps just because they were no match for Frenzy. It was the same for him. Ling Han sighed. Was he going to force his hand? We have to consider this matter carefully, Lin Yulian said again. Ling Han is one of the 5 great generals of our division. His combat ability is shocking, and his contributions are obvious to all. It's not fair to take him down just because of groundless accusations. Sister, you're wrong. Anything related to Frenzy must be dealt with seriously. Otherwise, no one can predict how terrifying the consequences will be. Xian Chihu said solemnly. As for whether or not Ling Han was framed, the 7 steps will naturally find out. He did not let go of one point. Since Ling Han was related to Frenzy, he had to be dealt with seriously. He would rather correct the wrong than let it go. He won the majority's approval on this point. Take him down. Take him down. Take him down. Their voices were like waves rising and falling. Ling Han, kneel down and accept your punishment. Feng Wuding was very pleased. Everything was really under his control now. What a scoundrel. White Rice could not help but scold. Ling Han glanced at Feng Wuding. Come over if you want a beating. I promise to beat you up. Then let's vote. Lin Yulian looked at Wu Haoyang. Let's vote. She was confident that she could make Wu Haoyang stand on her side. Then, even if Ling Han's vote did not count, they could still put this matter aside for now. Xian Chihu smiled but did not fall for it. I think this matter should be decided by everyone. Don't you all agree? Yes, that makes sense. We want to vote too. That's right. Making this sovereign fight alongside a spy and a traitor. This sovereign is not at ease. If we don't take down Ling Han, this sovereign will have to leave. Seconded. Agreed. Everyone nodded. There was no place for Ling Han in their eyes. Xian Chihu shook his head at Lin Yulian. Sister, it's better to respect everyone's opinion. Otherwise, how can we lead the team if we lose our morale? Lin Yulian hesitated. End of chapter. Chapter 2948. Fortunately, Yu Borong was at 6th step after all. His cultivation level had been suppressed, but his body had been tempered by the 5 essential powers, so he wouldn't fall because of the suppression of his cultivation level. Thus, he could completely endure Ling Han's attacks, which made him feel slightly uncomfortable. 6th step against 5th step, the suppression was greater than the heavens. Even in such a disadvantageous situation, Yu Borong still had a lot of room to retaliate. If he could exhaust Ling Han's heavenly venerate symbols, and he still had more, then with the help of the heavenly venerate symbols, he could close the gap in strength, and might even win. Of course, he could never have imagined that Ling Han had as many as 300 heavenly venerate symbols. If he wanted to exhaust Ling Han's heavenly venerate symbols, he had to first ask if he could withstand Ling Han's crazy bombardment. Zhou Heng saw this, but he stood by and did not have any intention of making a move. If he did not make a move, Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, Feng Wuding, and the others naturally could not make a move. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to a 6th step powerhouse. Only when Yu Borong's face was swollen did Zhou Heng open his mouth and say, Ling Han, stop. This is Lord Yu Borong, your senior. Ling Han withdrew his hand and said, Yes, Senior Zhou. Everyone was speechless. The two of them were clearly working together. Zhou Heng could have stopped them a long time ago, but he waited until Yu Borong was beaten up badly before speaking. He could not be more deliberate. Yu Borong was in a very sorry state. He was panting from anger. He stared at Ling Han, his eyes spitting fire. To him, this was a great humiliation. A dignified 6th step powerhouse was actually beaten up in public. How could he tolerate this? But what could he do? He could not win. Under the suppression of the realm, he was still not a match for Ling Han, even though he was only at 4th step. He could only endure it. Ling Han looked at Yu Borong and said, I'm really sorry to have offended Senior Yu. He even bowed. Yu Borong's face darkened. This change from arrogance to deference made him lose all face. He took a deep breath. He could not be led astray by Ling Han and Zhou Heng. The most important thing now was to nail Ling Han's crime. Don't waste your breath. I want to capture Ling Han. What do you say? He stared at Zhou Heng. Like I said, Ling Han's situation has already been explained to me, Senior Brother Lin, and Junior Brother Chu. The three of us have also checked his sea of consciousness. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it, Zhou Heng said calmly, but his tone was extremely firm. Who could reverse the decision of a sixth-step Empyrean? Zhou Heng, you're definitely going to protect this traitor, said Yu Borong. Don't be so decisive before there are any results. Meanwhile, Zhou Heng appeared to be calm and collected. Ling Han is not a traitor. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Haha, Brother Zhou's words are a bit too much. Laughter rang out, and a man walked over. No one could see where he had come from, as if he should have been here. Zhou Heng's eyes narrowed. Myriad shadows. Empyrean myriad shadows, 6 steps. I don't think so either. Nothing in the world will change. Another voice rang out. This time it was a white-haired old man. His body was covered in scarlet scales, and he had a tail that was several feet long. Golden silkworm. Zhou Heng's expression became a bit more serious. Empyrean golden silkworm, 6 steps. His true body was said to be a golden silkworm, and after becoming an Empyrean, he began to transform. The first transformation was into a snake, the second into a wolf, the third into a tiger, the fourth into an elephant, the fifth into a phoenix, and the sixth into a dragon. If he could transform one more time, he would be able to take 7 steps and become the strongest in the world. This was an incomparably strong opponent, and even Zhou Heng didn't dare say he could win for sure. This was because his opponent was also an outstanding person, who was 1 step away from reaching 7 steps. The reason why Empyrean Golden Silkworm looked so old was because he cultivated the Golden Silkworm transformation. If he really died of old age, his corpse would form a cocoon, and what would break out of it would be his 7 transformations body. Thus, the older he looked, the more terrifying his strength was. I agree. Capture this child and search his soul, said Empyrean Golden Silkworm. Zhou Heng suppressed the anger in his heart and said, the knowledge sea is extremely important, but it is also very fragile. If we search his soul, it will inevitably hurt Ling Han and affect his future development. So what? Isn't it only right to eliminate the remnants of madness? Yu Borong interrupted. Should your sister? Ling Han wanted to retort, but when he saw Zhou Heng's eyes, he could only suppress it. We can't say anything. We can only ask Lord Seven Steps to decide. Zhou Heng used his trump card. Not every 6 steps had a 7-step behind them. At least Yu Borong, Empyrean Golden Silkworm, and Empyrean Myriad Shadows didn't have one. Zhou Heng's strange signal only lasted for an instant before he felt an incomparably terrifying pressure descend. The 7 steps had arrived. Naturally, it was Lin Luo. He was only an avatar, but with the strength of a 7 steps, his avatar could suppress most 6 steps experts. If Lin Luo's true body was here, even the special environment here wouldn't be able to suppress him. The 7 steps had completely transcended heaven and earth, and he could display his full strength no matter where he was. Even the higher planes couldn't do anything to him. But now it was only an avatar, and it couldn't be so powerful. His realm was still suppressed to the 5 steps. Greetings, Lord Lin. Everyone bowed, including Zhou Heng and Empyrean Myriad Shadows. The 7 steps represented heaven and earth, the principles and everything. Lin Luo nodded, but just as he was about to speak he paused. Another terrifying aura descended. 1, 2, 3. All of them were avatars of 7 steps experts. Xian Fu, Chongyan Poyu. Brother Lin, we should capture this child, said Xian Fu. Fuck. Ling Han cursed in his heart. Then, he looked at Xian Chihu. Xian Fu might have been summoned by Xian Chihu. Lin Luo glanced at them and said, I think that Ling Han is very likely to be the one who will completely pacify the chaos in the future. So we should have absolute trust in him, and help him advance to the 7th step as soon as possible. After reaching the 7 steps, you will help madness attack us? Chongyan sneered. He and Lin Luo came from 2 different eras, 2 different origin worlds. He had no respect for Lin Luo at all. There's no need to say any more. There's already someone who can eliminate madness. It's Feng Wuding, he said loudly, as if he wanted to give Feng Wuding a proper name. It was fine to lose to Ling Han, but that was because Ling Han was someone from madness. Actually thinking about it, It was very funny. If Ling Han was really someone from madness, then he could defeat Feng Wuding. How could Feng Wuding defeat madness? Oh, he couldn't even deal with someone else's underlings. But he could kill an even more amazing boss. What a joke. I think we should kill him, Chong Yin said coldly. End of chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 2949. I second it, Heavenly Venerable Thunderpeak said. Seconded your sister. Ling Han cursed inwardly, but didn't say anything. Lin Luo was standing up for him now, and it was up to this 7th-step Supreme Venerable to settle it. It would be good if he could settle it, but if he couldn't, then Ling Han didn't plan to surrender. Cultivation level was suppressed here, and unless the 7th-step true body came, he had nothing to fear. Moreover, even if the 7th step came, he could tear open space and leave. In the void, only madness could be his opponent. Thus, Ling Han was very calm and considered other things. It was easy for him to leave, but what about the others? Ling Shi, Ling Jianshui, and the others were still developing territory in the Xuanma Plain, and he couldn't bring them along. If he left, what if his son and daughter were targeted? He thought again. Even if Lin Luo, Zhou Heng, and the others couldn't protect him, it should be a small matter to reach out and protect his children, because there was a reason to deal with Ling Han. But Ling Shi, Ling Jianshui, and the others couldn't. With the 7th-step Supreme Venerable's command, who dared to act recklessly? The Rain Emperor and the others were the same, not to mention by me. His grandfather was a 7th-step Supreme Venerable, who dared to touch him. He thought again and again, and then let go of his worry. At worst he would leave. To where? Of course, to the previous origin world. If he really started to flee, then he would have a lot of time to explore that ancient group of plains. Lin Luo argued, and even used his own reputation to vouch for Ling Han. If something happened to Ling Han, he would take responsibility. However, Chong Yin and Po Yu didn't give him face at all. They came from the previous origin world, and what friendship did they have with Lin Luo? Kill they must kill. Ling Han guessed that this was because of Feng Wuding. If he didn't die, Feng Wuding would carry the label of a failure, and forever be under him. Is there any intrigue between the two generations of the Yuan world in this? Ling Han seriously suspected that Chong Yin and Po Yu were purposely making things big to erase him, the strongest prodigy of the current origin world. There's nothing to say. Capture him, Celestial Chong said coldly. He nodded at Empyrean Thunder Mountain, and Thunder Mountain also nodded back. Then, they strode towards Ling Han. Fellow Taoist, you've crossed the line, said Ling Luo coldly. He was a 7th-step cultivator, and his words were the law. No one had ever disobeyed him before. Now, he had even made a Tao oath to vouch for Ling Han. But he was still disobeyed, which made him truly angry. Haha, eradicating the remnants of delirium is a matter of righteousness. Fellow Taoist Lin, you're the one who's being overly selfish. Empyrean Thundermount made a move, grabbing at Ling Han. Lin Luo made a move, but Celestial Venerable Chong Yin also made a move, blocking Lin Luo. Old bastard, I've had enough of you. Ling Han roared, and charged at Empyrean Thundermount. Bam! When the two of them collided, Heavenly Venerate Thundermount's body trembled slightly. However, Ling Han was sent flying, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. 7th step. Even if it was just a clone, even if it had suppressed its cultivation, it was still inconceivably powerful. But everyone cried out in shock. They all felt that Ling Han was extremely powerful. His true cultivation was only at the 4th step. Using a body at the 4th step to fight against a 7th step Supreme Being's clone. And he was able to take a blow head-on without suffering any injuries. That was just too powerful. You're already so powerful now. What will you become in the future? I can't let you live. Empyrean Thundermount's expression also changed slightly, but he didn't feel any shame for bullying the weak, nor did he feel any regret for not being able to kill a 4th step cultivator. 7th step was the greatest in the world. What did he need to care about? In his eyes, there was only the thought of achieving his goal. Kill. He charged over again, each of his attacks sharp. He wanted to kill Ling Han on the spot. Ling Han roared, and his heavenly venerate symbols revolved. He unleashed a furious fist, clashing head-on with Empyrean Sundermount. He was filled with boundless rage. He was innocent, so why did he have to suffer such treatment? Were they all blind? Didn't they see the contributions he had made to the flames now plain over the years? Some people were intentionally ignoring him, wanting to erase him from existence. This was nothing more than jealousy or a personal grudge. Hateful, shameful, short-sighted. It was no wonder that the previous generation of the Origin world could only fight to the point where both sides suffered. The entire Origin world was destroyed, but it only heavily injured Madness. It didn't solve the root of this disaster. What about this generation? Ling Han might be able to deal with Madness in the future, but if he was killed now, then there would be no future. Taking a step back, even if his soul was searched, there wouldn't be any problems. But what if he was injured in the process? The spiritual sea was incomparably important, and it was related to the limits of one's future growth. If he was injured, it would be equivalent to destroying Ling Han's future. Old bastard, should I step on your grandfather's ancestral grave, or should I kill your father? Ling Han cursed as he fought. He was too angry, and he wouldn't feel good if he didn't curse. Don't think that you're indestructible. When I reach the 7th step, I'll suppress you in the latrine pit, and let your name go down in history. Empyrean Sundermount was at the 7th step, and his temperament was like an ancient well. It was impossible for him to be affected. Why was that? He was too powerful. Firstly, no one dared to be impudent in front of him. Secondly, even if they were impudent, he could kill them with a single slap. There was no chance for him to be angry. However, he was only a clone now, and his cultivation was suppressed. No matter what, he couldn't suppress Ling Han. This made him angrier and angrier, and his eyebrows twitched. How could there be such a hateful brat? His mouth was too poisonous. However, Ling Han's ultimate moves made Empyrean Sundermount feel helpless. He was only a clone, and he couldn't use all the abilities of the main body, such as the Empyrean symbol. If it was in the outside world, he could use his cultivation to suppress Ling Han. But here, he was only slightly stronger than the 6th step. He was far from being able to suppress Ling Han. Seeing that Sundermount couldn't take down Ling Han, Empyrean Chongyin couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. This brat was going to defy the heavens. Daoist Chongyin, as you can see, Ling Han's potential is limitless. It's very likely that he will be the only candidate to eliminate Madness in the future, said Lin Luo. Since Ling Han was temporarily safe, he naturally didn't need to be anxious. Empyrean Chongyin snorted. It's hard to say whether this brat is a friend or foe. Who knows if he will be Madness's blade? One Madness is already so difficult to deal with. If there's another 7th step helper, it'll be troublesome. Moreover, we still have Feng Wooding. He's the son of destiny chosen by the previous Origin world. Feng Wooding couldn't help but puff out his chest when his name was called out, making his presence known. Lin Luo glanced at him and only chuckled. What did this mean? What did this mean? Feng Wooding instantly felt like he was going crazy. Was he being looked down upon? If you want to kill me, one won't be enough. No matter how many come, it won't be enough. Ling Han roared. He started to explode, and all the 8 stream talismans activated at the same time, causing his strength to increase by 1,000 times. End of this chapter. Chapter 2950. At the very least, Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone wouldn't be able to block it. At the very least, Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone wouldn't be able to block it. After all, this was just a clone, and its cultivation level had been suppressed. It would be a miracle if it could match up to Ling Han's explosive power. Bang! Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone was instantly sent flying. His body trembled, and light flashed, making him seem illusory. This was because his clone had been formed from the intrinsic power of his origin world. It wasn't a body of flesh and blood, so it naturally wouldn't vomit blood. But now that it had suffered such a heavy blow, its body had almost collapsed. To Empyrean Sunderpeak, whether his clone was destroyed or not didn't matter at all. But the problem was that he had come with all his might, but it had been destroyed by a puny 4th step cultivator. That would be a huge joke. Thus, Empyrean Sunderpeak roared. his body glowing as he forcibly stabilized it. This clone was formed from a single strand of his divine will condensed from 6 kinds of intrinsic power. The key was his divine will. Now that his divine will had collapsed, it was naturally impossible for him to condense these powers together again. "Brat, you dare act so viciously," he charged back at Ling Han. But in the face of Ling Han's 1,000-fold explosion of power, he didn't have any Empyrean symbols to use. How could he block it? Bang, bang, bang. He was continuously sent flying by Ling Han. Everyone watched with their eyes wide open, and a strong sense of surrealism rose in their hearts. That was a 7th-step cultivator. Even if it was just a clone, it shouldn't be this weak. "Fierce your sister. I'm going to beat you up," Ling Han roared. He knew that even if he destroyed Empyrean Sunderpeak's clone, it wouldn't cause him any harm. But he could still give him a vicious slap. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. "Old 8th King, are you trying to bully me just because you're a 7th-step cultivator? Come, let's see how you bully me now." Everyone was dumbfounded. The 7th-step cultivator, who was invincible and omnipotent in their eyes, had actually been defeated one day. No matter what the reason was, a defeat was a defeat. "Ling Han, I'll fight you," Feng Wuting roared and charged over. "You're not worthy of Lord 7th Step." This was naturally to help Empyrean Sunderpeak regain some face. But who was blind? Could it be that Empyrean Sunderpeak had been blasted to such a miserable state? Empyrean Sundermount naturally disdained to join forces with Feng Wuting. He wanted to retreat, but Ling Han wouldn't let him go. He just kept chasing after him, punching out without end. Now Ling Han was fighting 1 against 2. It was just that he wasn't fighting Feng Wuting at all. Everyone was even more speechless now. Even with Feng Wuting's help, Empyrean Poyu was still being suppressed. This was a resounding slap to the face. Feng Wuting was very strong, but Ling Han was even stronger. He activated 100 planes to suppress Feng Wuting. It was not a projection but a real plane. Feng Wuting couldn't help but tremble. One had to know that his limit was 100 planes, but he had only nurtured 92 of them. Where's Ling Han? Even if this was Ling Han's limit, he would still be able to fight evenly with Empyrean Poyu. He was extremely arrogant, and his greatest trump card was these 100 planes. But now, Ling Han had easily beaten him to a draw. How could he not be dazed? Was he really the child of destiny from the previous generation's origin world? Old bastard, die! Ling Han punched out furiously. He wanted to blow his opponent up in a single breath, not giving him a chance to reform his body. Little brat, little brat. Empyrean Sundermount also roared angrily, but there was nothing he could do. His body trembled violently, and with a bang, he finally collapsed. Everyone was shocked. They almost didn't dare to believe their eyes. 7th Step was invincible. That was something that was deeply ingrained in everyone's minds. But now, he had suddenly collapsed. Although it could be said that Ling Han had joined forces with the suppression of heaven and earth to destroy Empyrean Sundermount's clone, everyone chose to ignore it. All they knew was that a 7th Step clone had been destroyed by a 4th Step clone. In another space of the extraterritorial battlefield, this place was dark, silent, and seemed like a void. But here, the 10 most powerful people of the entire origin world were engaged in an intense battle. Their opponents didn't reveal their incarnations. Instead, countless tentacles were constantly lashing out, each one emitting boundless power. Even a 6th Step powerhouse would be slain in a single blow. This was the battlefield where the 10 7th Step powerhouses fought against the main body of madness. It was also because of them that madness was unable to focus more on creation, reducing the pressure on the other 2 layers. This was especially true when Chong Yen and the other 7th Step powerhouses had joined the battle hundreds of millions of years ago. Although they hadn't been able to change their disadvantageous situation, they had still played an incomparably important role. However, an earth-shattering roar suddenly rang out from this place. Empyrean Sundermount's entire body emitted boundless light. Even the heavens and earth were about to crawl under his feet. His anger had turned into something tangible. Bang! 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 Space shattered. Brat! His eyes emitted a cold light. His clone had been destroyed, so he naturally received feedback immediately. This made him extremely angry. He was a 7th Step. Seventh step. No, he had to personally move out and kill that brat. Fellow Taoist Sundermount, calm down. Lin Luo said. Don't forget our duties. Empyrean Sundermount was unable to restrain his anger. That brat dared to destroy my clone. How can I let him off? This was too embarrassing. He was a seventh-step powerhouse. Chong Yin frowned. This brat's potential is astonishing. If he acts as an accomplice, who can stop him? We have to kill him now. Empyrean Big Dipper said coldly. Yes. Xian Yu and Half Moon nodded. They were both from the previous origin world, so they naturally had the same opinion. I definitely don't agree, Lin Luo immediately said. I don't agree either. Bai Fan shook his head. Wu Jihong also shook his head, and did not say anything. The Firefrost Plains 4th 7th step powerhouse, Empyrean Blood Rainbow, also expressed that he did not agree to kill Ling Han. Brother Xian, what do you say? Empyrean Chong Yin looked at Xian Fu. He believed that Xian Fu had the same opinion as them, and would definitely agree to kill Ling Han. Then, 6 against 4 would naturally be a foregone conclusion. Xian Fu muttered to himself for a moment and said, I don't agree. What? Empyrean Chong Yin and the others were stunned. Didn't you already send your clones to target Ling Han? Why are you objecting now? Did you take the wrong medicine? You've been beaten silly by frenzy. But now it was 5 against 5, and no one could convince the other. Humph. Empyrean Sundermount suddenly withdrew and left. He was a 7th step powerhouse, so he could only be suppressed and could not be killed. And now frenzy only had a slight upper hand. Most of its energy was focused on creation, so he could leave as he pleased. He could be so willful. But Lin Luo and the others could not leave as they pleased. Once they left, who would resist frenzy? Furthermore, frenzy would have more energy to create more frenzy army, speeding up the destruction of the Firefrost Plain. Xiao, Empyrean Sundermount tore through space and disappeared. End of chapter. Chapter 2952. Ling Han's speed was extremely fast. Only 7 years later, he arrived at the previous origin world. Traveling in the void, the only one who could be faster than him was probably madness. The three immediately began to search for the spatial passageway to deeper planes. As long as Ling Han could reach level 7 battle prowess, then he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. He could directly kill his way down, ignoring the energy storms and intrinsic flames. Those guys are really despicable. Hunyeo pouted, and put her hands on her hips. They actually dared to slander Nyo's Ling Han. Nyo will kill them all. The little girl was fierce. She was never kind. And when she was little, she was even as fierce as a little tiger. The Empress glanced at her. You're too weak. That's just a pipe dream. Wayaya, you big vixen, actually daring to say Nyo can't. Hunyeo was furious. The Empress only sneered at her and didn't say much, but the meaning was clear. Ling Han waved his hand, indicating that the two girls should stop arguing, though they were just bickering. He said, actually this isn't bad. We can see who's helping me and who wants me dead. Also, now we have enough time to search here, Hunyeo said, giggling. That's true. The Empress nodded. Otherwise, we'll be restricted and have to fight against the madness army in the foreign battlefield. But now, since they view us as traitors, we have no need to help them. Alright, this time, we'll cultivate to level 7 battle prowess before going out, Ling Han said, laughing loudly. They came to the 13th plane, but it could only be said to be the 13th, not the 13th level, because they arrived through a spatial passageway, so they couldn't be sure which level the plane they were in was at all. This didn't matter. The important thing was how much they could gain here. The three were very low-key and careful. Now the whole world could be said to be filled with enemies, so they couldn't expose their tracks. Otherwise, they would attract the pursuit of heavenly venerable Sundermount. And no matter how freakish Ling Han was, only death awaited him. There were innumerable good things here, but it was also very difficult to obtain them, and it also required luck. Energy storms swept about crazily. This place was filled with danger, and even if Ling Han was at the 6th step, he still couldn't be careless. Although he had stage 6 fighting ability, his body was only refined by the 3 fundamental powers, and was far from reaching stage 6. Speaking of which, Ling Han's physique had always been strong beyond his cultivation level, but now it was the other way around. The indestructible Heaven Scroll could no longer keep up, and Ling Han did not plan to advance it any further, because the indestructible Heaven Scroll had its limitations. It was created in one step, and had not come into contact with the 6 essential powers yet. To put it bluntly, the strength of an Empyrean depended on one's intrinsic strength. Using this strength was fundamental. Ling Han had a lot of time now, so he focused on cultivating. The current situation should be rather stable. After all, with the addition of Chong Yen and the other 4-step 7s, the fiery frost dimension's strength had doubled in an instant. Meanwhile, Zhou Heng and Chu Hao could step into the 7th step at any time. Even if they were to face frenzy, they would still be forced to retreat. He believed that it would not be difficult for them to hold on until the day that the Black Missouri dimension was upgraded to a super high level. Since there was nothing to worry about, Ling Han naturally put all his thoughts on cultivation. He searched for veins, strengthening his own strength at the same time. The power of the dimension in his body was growing vigorously, and as his cultivation level increased slightly, the limit of the dimensions had already broken through the 200 mark. He needed to spend a large amount of time to strengthen these dimensions to their current limit. As long as there was a slight increase, Ling Han's battle prowess would also increase a little. In the blink of an eye, more than 4 million years had passed. Ling Han's cultivation level had indeed increased, but he had not even reached the late stage of the 4th step. There were too few origin stone mines here, and with the terrifying amount of energy he needed to advance, he could not support them at all. His advancement was indeed faster because of this, but there was a limit to how fast it was. It could not be helped. The deeper he went into this group of dimensions, the harsher the environment was, and the more broken the heaven and earth was, the fewer Empyrean stones there were. However, although there were fewer origin stones, the value of the goods was higher, and there were even symbols of 4th-rate Empyrean stones. Perhaps if he went deeper into the lower dimensions, there might be symbols of 3rd-rate, 2nd-rate, or even 1st-rate. Ling Han was suddenly startled. He sensed a few auras rapidly approaching him. He did not immediately break through the void and leave. Although these auras were powerful, they were far from reaching the 7th step. He was not afraid of anyone below the 7th step. Swish, swish, swish. Very quickly, 11 people appeared in front of Ling Han. It was actually somewhat inappropriate to say that there were 11 people, because 8 of them were indeed humans, but the other 3 were monsters with many legs, many hands, and many heads. 3 frenzied creations, plus Huang Fudongyue and the other 8 spies. Ling Han, now that you have been abandoned by everyone in the origin world, you should return to the main body. Huang Fudongyue said, "We are all on the same side, and we have the main body's spiritual imprint. I wonder how much nobler we are compared to those weak living beings. As long as you renounce darkness and seek the light, the main body can completely forgive your crimes." Ling Han laughed heartily. "All right, I will renounce darkness and seek the light now. Then follow us back to the main body. The main body has something to say to you face to face." Huang Fudongyue said. Ling Han scoffed. "I am not under the control of the frenzy, and my battle prowess is even more outstanding, far surpassing its imagination. It can't sit still anymore, right? What talk to my face? It only wants to kill me, and then study my corpse. Ling Han, why do you have to do this?" Huang Fudongyue continued to persuade him. "Don't forget how the people in the origin world treated you." Ling Han nodded. "I haven't forgotten who caused me to be in this state. We are just telling the truth." Huang Fudongyue laughed. "Ling Han, you have no way out. Now all the 7th step experts are chasing after you. As long as they find you, you will only have one path, death. Your future is so bright. Why do you have to hang yourself on the tree of the origin world? Can they see your grievances? Will they sympathize with you?" Ling Han laughed heartily. "I haven't seen you for millions of years. I didn't expect your eloquence to grow. Go back and tell Frenzied to wash its neck. I will personally chop off its head." Ling Han, Frenzied might have several heads. "Which neck do you want it to wash?" Hunyo said with a grin. True. Ling Han nodded. Hearing the conversation between the two, Huang Fudongyue didn't speak anymore. Obviously, Ling Han's will was very firm, and it was impossible for him to persuade him. Then he could only use force. He sighed. This was the worst plan, because Ling Han could freely travel between planes, and it was too difficult to stop him. You don't listen to the main body's call, and will eventually be destroyed by the main body's radiance. Chapter 2953. Ling Han laughed loudly. What bullshit glory, show it to me. Kill. 3 6-step monsters charged over, each with their full strength, trying to give Ling Han enough pressure, so that he wouldn't have the time to tear open space and escape. Unfortunately, after millions of years, though Ling Han's cultivation level didn't improve much, his strength increased greatly, though he still couldn't match the peak stage of 6-step. It wasn't that he didn't have the power to resist. He was at a disadvantage, but he didn't have to worry about his life at all. At least, not in the short term. Capture them. Huang Fudongyue waved his hand, leading the remaining 7 to charge at Hunyou and the Empress. Ling Han obviously wouldn't let them succeed, and forcefully broke out of the encirclement, taking the Empress and Hunyou into the Immortal Visitor Inn. He stood proudly. If you want to fight, I'll keep you company. Ling Han, you're treacherous and only death awaits you, Huang Fudongyue said. Noisy. Ling Han snorted and threw a punch at him. Huang Fudongyue obviously couldn't block it, but with the 3 6-step monsters' help, Ling Han's attack was neutralized. What's the point? Huang Fudongyue said with a smile. As long as you return to your main body, you'll obtain inconceivable power, and make those who humiliated you bow at your feet. He obviously didn't really want to persuade Ling Han to surrender, but deliberately disturbed Ling Han's mind. Even if Ling Han was only listening to his words, it would have a slight effect on Ling Han's battle prowess. He was already at a disadvantage, and this slight effect was also huge. Ling Han's heart was as cold as ice, and he only waved his fists to resist. From time to time, he would release more than 200 planes, forming a terrifying pressure that even the 3 6-step monsters would be affected to a certain extent. If Ling Han used these planes as weapons to directly attack, the 3 6-step monsters would have nothing to fear, and it would only take a little effort to shatter these planes. But now it was only used as a deterrent, but it gave them a headache. From time to time, it would be released and then retracted, causing their attacks to be distorted and their reactions to slow down. In fact, it had a huge impact. This also allowed Ling Han to continue to persevere. Otherwise, no matter how monstrous he was, it would be impossible for him to fight against 3 peak 6-step experts, let alone 3. However, no matter what, the 3 6-step martial artists still had the upper hand in terms of strength. Soon, Ling Han was surrounded by danger, and wounds appeared on his body. I'm done playing, Ling Han said in his heart. He could have run away a long time ago, but in order to test his combat strength, he decided to fight a little longer. If they continued to fight, it would no longer be a test of strength, but a death sentence. As Ling Han ran, the 3 big steps 6 steps gave chase. Both sides ran extremely fast, the endless mountains and rivers behind them. But interestingly, they would stop from time to time, because a terrifying energy storm appeared in front of them, forcing them to stop. If they forced their way through, even a 6-step martial artist would be heavily injured. The energy storm did not bias, sometimes stopping Ling Han, and sometimes stopping the 3 big steps 6 steps 6 steps. Overall, it was quite fair, so the distance between the two sides never increased. Ling Han. Just as Ling Han was running happily, he saw a person suddenly appear in front of him. Exanchihu. Without another word, he directly attacked Ling Han. Boom! The combat strength of a peak 6-step martial artist erupted, and this attack was extremely terrifying. Ling Han had no choice but to parry. Exchanging blows with Chihu caused his body to tremble, and his internal organs to boil. It was extremely uncomfortable. And at this time, the 3 big steps 6-step martial artists also attacked. Boom! Although these 3 monsters were frenzied and hostile to all living beings in the origin world, they clearly had a focus. Now they had their eyes on Ling Han, and all of their attacks were directed at him. What's wrong? Are you rebelling? Xi and Chihu attacked Ling Han, but at the same time, he attacked the three monsters. You really are a vengeful spirit. I see you everywhere I go. Ling Han snorted. He quickly adjusted the chaos in his body, allowing his combat strength to return to its peak. When the 4 big steps 6-step martial artists attacked, it was even more impossible for Ling Han to match them. He used the plane to buy himself some time, and then he fled once more. Bang bang bang. Xi and Chihu and the 3 big steps 6-step monsters chased after him. But as they chased, they also fought fiercely, causing the scene to become incomparably chaotic. But this was equivalent to buying time for Ling Han, allowing him to quickly shake off his pursuers. Right now I really can't please either side. Does everyone want to kill me? Ling Han muttered, but his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. The greater the pressure, the more unfair treatment he received, the more his fighting spirit soared, and he dug out his own potential. He entered a short period of seclusion to digest the insights he had gained from this battle. This kind of lingering on the edge of life and death was the best way for him to gain enlightenment. He began to extrapolate the celestial sovereign symbols. After reaching the 3rd step, celestial sovereigns would have the qualifications to extrapolate celestial sovereign symbols. But as for how many 3rd step celestial sovereigns could do this, and what level the celestial sovereign symbol would be, that was a completely different matter. Ling Han had far too many celestial sovereign symbols within his body. He wanted to control them, using an existing 7th stream talisman to extrapolate its neighboring symbols. That way, if he could succeed, he would be able to obtain even more combined symbols. That would be much more useful than just randomly extrapolating one. Why didn't he just extrapolate a first-rate symbol? Haha, that was too difficult. Perhaps he could succeed, but it might take 100 million years, or even 1 billion years. Ling Han felt that increasing his cultivation base was more important. But after 30,000 years, Ling Han had successfully extrapolated a 3rd-rate symbol. If news of this spread, countless jaws would drop. In just 30,000 years, he had already extrapolated an celestial sovereign symbol. I have too many advantages. I have the power of countless planes in my body, and I already have the embryonic form of the origin world. Then, I used the resonance of the celestial sovereign symbols, and the insights I gained after the life and death battle. That was why I only spent 30,000 years. Ling Han muttered to himself. He didn't continue his seclusion, because the insights he had gained from the previous battle had already disappeared. He continued to explore the origin stone mine, but he discovered that it was gradually becoming more lively. More and more 6th-step experts were arriving. He couldn't rule out the possibility that they were here to mine the origin stones. But if he bumped into them, he wouldn't mind making a move. Ling Han had sunk into a bitter battle. There were enemies almost everywhere here, because this ruined plane was really too small. Several years later, Ling Han found a spatial passageway, and he entered a new plane. He should be the first person to enter this place. The surrounding mountains and rivers didn't show any signs of being excavated. Perhaps I can reach the peak of 4th step here. Ling Han unleashed his ability and began to search for the origin stone vein. Chapter 2954. Ling Han's luck began to turn for the better. He opened a great many origin stones that contained great medicines, allowing his cultivation to finally begin to increase at a decent rate. If this continued, he would only need a few 100,000 years to reach the peak stage of the 4th step. The problem was, were there so many great medicines here? No matter, he just had to mine as much as he could. The Empress and Hunyo both fully supported Ling Han. Their growth had already reached the limit, and the 4th step was their limit. Perhaps they could advance to the 5th step, but who knew how many years later that would be? Thus, the great medicines they mined would all be given to Ling Han, striving to help Ling Han break through to the 5th step as soon as possible. Just like that, Ling Han's cultivation slowly increased, and after more than 2 million years, he finally reached the late stage of the 4th step, one step closer to the peak stage. But just at this moment, The passageway into this place was finally discovered, and a large number of elites barged in. Not only were there the heavenly venerables of the fiery frost plane, there were also Frenzy's subordinates. Ling Han. He was discovered again. 7 creations of Frenzy appeared, each one exuding a terrifying aura that was even stronger than his. 6 steps. All of them were at the 6th step, and they were all at the peak stage of the 6th step. There were many 6th-step creations created by Frenzy, but there definitely weren't many that reached the peak stage of the 6th step, and those that still possessed intelligence were even fewer. Ling Han knew that Frenzy had truly become wary of him. Previously, there were 3 6th-step creations, and now there were 4 more, clearly determined to kill him no matter what. He immediately put the Empress and Hunyo away. When facing those with battle prowess of the 6th step, the 2 girls couldn't help him at all. With a shout, the 7 6th-step creations charged over, all of them exuding a terrifying aura, wanting to blast Ling Han into pieces. With just you guys, you're still a bit lacking. Ling Han exchanged blows with these monsters. He knew that he was no match for them, but this was a rare opportunity to gain experience. Even if he couldn't gain enlightenment, he could still sharpen his battle prowess, which was also quite good. However, the battle hadn't lasted long, and Ling Han felt immense pressure. Not only were the monsters created by Frenzy at the peak of Step 6, but they were also proficient in techniques, and even had second-rate combination talismans. If it was a first-class talisman, Frenzy should have been bestowed to Meng Dong, Huangfu Dongyue, and the others. Even if it was the strongest in the world, it could not be comprehended so easily. It would definitely take a long time. Therefore, in order to make its creations powerful enough to kill Ling Han, it could only equip these monsters with second-rate combination talismans. In fact, this was also a kind of risk. Without his own spiritual imprint, a 6th-step Empyrean that had developed spiritual wisdom would definitely slowly awaken and form its own free will. It would walk on its own path and break away from the control of the Frenzy, which Empyrean was willing to submit to others, let alone a peak 6th step. However, in a short period of time, these 6 steps would not be able to break free from the control of Frenzy. In order to kill Ling Han, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Boom! The violent power surged like a tsunami, bombarding endlessly towards Ling Han. Ling Han parried, but his opponents were too strong, and they had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. Naturally, he could only parry. Moreover, he was surrounded by danger, and he was constantly walking on the edge of life and death. There was nothing he could do. His battle prowess was very strong, but his body had only been tempered by 3 kinds of intrinsic power, and its degree of toughness was far from comparable to that of a 6th step. Even so, he fought with all his might. Unless he truly could not hold on any longer, he would absolutely not retreat. After fighting for another dozen or so days, Ling Han finally withdrew. The 7 great monsters hurriedly chased after him, but Ling Han used the terrain here to constantly shake them off. He had been here for 2 million years. Although he did not know every place like the back of his hand, it was no problem for him to trap these newcomers. The 7 great monsters chased after him, and 3 of them were actually severely injured by the energy storm. If it were not for the fact that there were still 4 of them, Ling Han really wanted to turn around and kill them. After escaping, Ling Han began to cultivate in seclusion again. After using 30,000 years, Ling Han digested the insights he had gained from this battle. At the same time, he used the resonance of the celestial venerate symbol to create another 7th stream talisman. If he could continue like this, he might only need 100 million years to create all the 7th stream talismans. He came out of seclusion and continued to search for origin stones, but he did not expect to run into Xian Chihu again. This fellow was haunting him. Ling Han really wondered if he had a grudge against him in his previous life. Why was he always staring at him? There was nothing much to say. Let's just fight. He now had the primordial power of a late-stage 6th-step cultivator, which was only slightly inferior to Xian Chihu. This made him completely qualified to fight. As the 2 fought, although Xian Chihu still had the upper hand, the gap was not large. If Ling Han could reach the peak of 4th step, He would not be weaker than Xi and Chihu, and it would not be strange for him to have the upper hand. They both used their full strength, and the fight was extremely intense. Ling Han had cultivated hundreds of planes, and when he released them to suppress them, even a sixth-step cultivator would be affected. As for Xi and Chihu, he had a first-class combination talisman, which was also incomparably domineering. When he attacked, there was nothing that could not be destroyed. They fought for several months, and finally, a sixth-step cultivator from the Frostflame plane appeared and joined the battle to attack Ling Han. Xi and Chihu, let's fight again next time. Ling Han retreated. But next time, I will make you cry. You have a sharp tongue, Xi and Chihu said coldly. He only chased for a while before giving up. The terrain here was complex, and if there was not much of a difference in speed, no one could catch up to the other. It was difficult to kill and celestial venerate of the same level. This was not just a saying. After escaping from Xi and Chihu, Ling Han naturally went into seclusion again. Although Xi and Chihu was very annoying, he was a relatively good candidate as an opponent to sharpen himself. In a one-on-one situation, the only people who could give Ling Han such great pressure were Xi and Chihu, Wu Haoyang, Lin Yulian, and a few others. What a coincidence! When Ling Han came out of seclusion, he quickly encountered Xi and Chihu again. There was nothing to say, and the two of them continued to fight. Compared to the previous battle, Ling Han had made great progress, but as a genius, how could Xi and Chihu not have improved? Xi and Chihu still had the upper hand, but his advantage was becoming smaller and smaller. I really let you become my subordinate, Xi and Chihu said harshly. Unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world, Ling Han said indifferently as his fist swung even faster. Once I reach the sixth step, killing you will be as easy as flipping my hand, Xi and Chihu said. Nonsense, if I reach the sixth step, killing you will be as easy as beating my own son, Ling Han retorted. Not only did the two of them fight fiercely, but they also fought fiercely with their mouths. Ling Han and the large black dog had long since trained their tongues to be poisonous, but he did not expect that Xi and Chihu was not easy to deal with either. His verbal skills were not any weaker than Ling Han's. This battle lasted for close to a month, before the two of them reluctantly called it a day. It was not that someone had barged in and interrupted their battle, but that they had used all the techniques they could. If they continued to fight, they would just be repeating themselves, and they would not be able to do anything to their opponent. The end of this chapter. Chapter 2956. The learning ability of a 7-step elite was naturally strong. In just a few days, that female supreme had already learned to speak, but her intelligence was not to be praised, still at the level of a 3-year-old child. Ling Han taught her how to restrain her aura. If this continued, the skin all over his body would split open. The red-clothed woman learned for a few more days, and finally learned how to control her aura. If she did not actively reveal it, even a 6-step elite wouldn't discover how strong she was. Ling Han let the Empress and Hu Niu out of the Celestial Entertainer residence, and the two women couldn't help but be surprised when they saw a beautiful woman suddenly appear. This woman's beauty was definitely not inferior to theirs. Who is she? Hu Niu asked curiously. Who is she? The red-clothed woman also asked with her head tilted. She was now the same as Xiao Gu in the past, and liked to imitate others the most. Dug out from a rock. Ling Han spread his hands. The two women were curious, and stared at this woman. The red-clothed woman also tilted her head to look back at them. Her eyes also filled with curiosity. Why were these two different from Ling Han? Don't underestimate her, she's a 7-step elite, Ling Han said. What? The Empress and Hu Niu were both given a fright. There was no existence more terrifying than a 7-step elite in this world. Husband, what kind of luck is this? You even opened up a 7-step elite. The Empress said ruefully. Previously, Ling Han had opened up a 7-step elite, but that was a corpse unlike this one, which was a living existence. If this spread out, it would definitely scare a large number of people to death. The red-clothed woman giggled. She was a child, fond of playing around and mischievous. What's your name? Hunyo asked curiously. The red-clothed woman tilted her head. I don't have a name. Hunyo couldn't help but be excited. Then Nyo will give you one. Okay. The red-clothed woman clapped her hands. She seemed to find Hunyo's words interesting, and imitated her. Nyo wants a name. No, Nyo is the only one that can use it, Hunyo emphasized. The red-clothed woman seemed to understand and nodded blankly. Hunyo was very excited. This was giving a seventh-step martial artist a name, so she felt a great sense of accomplishment. I'll call you Sister Leopard. After thinking for a long time, she finally thought of a name. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. He had given Hunyo this name previously, and this little girl still wanted to carry it forward? He's wearing crimson robes. Why don't we name him after that? The Empress suggested. It was rare for her to be interested in the matters of others. After all, it was 7 steps. Sister Leopard sounds better, Hunyo insisted. Chi-yi is more suitable. The Empress didn't back down. The 2 girls were at loggerheads again. They both wanted the right to name the 7 steps. Absolute flame. The red-clothed woman suddenly spoke. She pointed at herself. Nyo likes this name. Well, neither of them got what they wanted. Hunyo meanwhile jumped up. Don't snatch Nyo's exclusive property. The red-robed woman, Empyrean Jadefire, giggled. Nyo is Jadefire. No matter how furious Hunyo was, and how she protested repeatedly, Empyrean Jadefire didn't mind at all, and firmly believed in this name. Ling Han tried to ask her about the matters before she fell into deep sleep, but Empyrean Jadefire couldn't remember anything. She had even just started learning how to speak, so how could she have any memories of the past? Let's go and take a look at other places. Ling Han gave up. Jadefire is 7 steps. Can you take us to a deeper plane? The Empress asked. Ling Han nodded. Haha, it's still you who understands me the best. Nonsense, Nyo also understands, Hunyo hurriedly said. The 4 of them directly descended, and wanted to forcefully barge into the next plane like this. Not long after, they could see the flames formed by intrinsic particles burning fiercely. The closer they got to the core of the plane cluster, the more terrifying the pressure became. It could burn even a 6th-step Empyrean into ashes. Ling Han pushed Empyrean Jadefire out, but this female paragon didn't have any courage at all. With a shriek, she immediately fled back. However, she was too strong. With a sharp shriek, the eardrums of Ling Han and the others ruptured, and blood flowed out. Those intrinsic flames also seemed to have suffered a blow, and were extinguished one after another. Empyrean Jadefire couldn't help but be startled. She hadn't thought that the might of her shriek would actually be so powerful. She was curious, and released another sharp shriek that rolled out, extinguishing the flames even further away. Ling Han hurriedly drew Hunyo and the Empress into the celestial visitor residence, and then used his own power to protect them. Otherwise, even if they were protected by a heavenly venerable tool, so what? They would definitely be shaken into a bloody mess. Meanwhile, he himself covered his ears with his hands, but he still couldn't avoid the skin all over his body being torn apart, and blood flowing out of his orifices. Stop, he called out. Empyrean Jadefire was having fun, and completely ignored his existence. When she finally discovered that something was wrong with him, Ling Han was already covered in blood, and the skin all over his body had long since been torn to shreds. What's wrong with you? She asked, tilting her head, her expression innocent. Ling Han was speechless. He had been wounded to such an extent, yet he still couldn't take revenge, which made him feel gloomy. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't defeat her now, even if he could, would he have the nerve to bully a child? Forget it, he was definitely going to suffer this loss. Come. Let's retreat first, and I'll teach you a few moves. Ling Han sighed. If he wanted Empyrean Jadefire to open a path for him, then he would first have to let her learn how to control her power, and how to use it. Otherwise, before they could enter the next level, he would already be dead. Empyrean Jadefire still wanted to play, but when he saw Ling Han walking all the way back, he could only follow gloomily. Next, Ling Han taught Empyrean Jadefire how to use her own power. 7 steps was 7 steps. Empyrean Jadefire learned very quickly, and probably in a few months' time, she would be able to perfectly control her own power. But only a few days had passed, and Ling Han was discovered. This time it was the people of the fiery frost plain. There were a total of 7 people, and they were naturally all at the 6th step. Yu Borong. Ling Han immediately recognized one of them. This old fellow really wanted to kill him, and he was working so hard to find him. Ling Han, I found you, Yu Borong said darkly. Ling Han made an O sound. Then congratulations. Congratulations to me, Yu Borong humphed. Did you think this was a game? Now that I've found you, it means that it's time for you to die, he said darkly. Ling Han naturally didn't care. It was just 7 6 steps. So what if they surrounded him? They couldn't kill him instantly. As long as he couldn't be killed instantly, he could tear open the void and return to the origin world. No one could chase after him. Furthermore, there was a 7th step beside him now. Why don't you come and try? Then bring it on. See how I'll take care of you, Ling Han said with a smile. Go. There's no need to be polite, Yu Borong said coldly. The 7 6 steps surrounded him, and they all emitted a dense pressure. Chapter 2957. How many 6-step cultivators were there in the world? 100 or so might have been a bit more in the beginning, but there had been internal strife, and some of the 6-step cultivators had fallen. So now there were only about 100. Although the 6-step cultivators could not be called sovereigns, they were still the strongest in the world. Each one of them had the power to sweep through the ages. Yu Borong's group of 7 surrounded him, all of them brimming with killing intent. This was someone who had to be killed. Yu Borong had done so to take revenge for his son, while the other 6 felt that Ling Han was too monstrous. Once he was allowed to possess the battle prowess of a 7th step, he would cause immeasurable damage to the origin world. What do you want to do? Empyrean Flame asked somewhat timidly. These people were brimming with killing intent, scaring her to death. Those who are with this brat are definitely not good people. Let's kill them together, one of the 6th-step cultivators said. Yu Borong was the first to attack. Hong! He raised his palm and slammed it towards Ling Han and Empyrean Flame. Ah! When Empyrean Flame saw this attack, his first reaction was not to dodge or block, but to grab his head and scream in terror. The sound waves turned into waves that spread in all directions. Ling Han had long since been prepared. Not only had he covered his ears, but he had also activated more than 100 planes to defend himself. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the planes, but fortunately, they did not shatter. Even so, blood still flowed out of Ling Han's nose. He was unable to completely avoid this vicious attack. If he was in such a state, then there was no need to mention Yu Borong and the others. They were all sent flying, their clothes in tatters. Their skin had split open, and blood was pouring out. So what if they were 6th-step cultivators? In front of the power of a 7th-step cultivator, their hair was in a mess, and they were bleeding from their orifices. Ling Han took this opportunity to attack. He went straight for Yu Borong. This old bastard had targeted him time and time again. He was too hateful. Pung pung pung. He attacked with his full strength, and all of the 8th grade symbols activated, increasing his strength by 1,000 times. With his current late-stage 6th-step power, he had already reached the point where he could suppress Yu Borong. Yu Farong was currently in a state of agitation. Who would have thought that a girl who looked so weak could actually explode with such terrifying battle prowess? He had 6 steps, but he couldn't block the power of the roar. What did this mean? This woman was a 7th-step supremacy. But how could that be? 2 generations of the primordial world only added up to 10 7th-step masters. Even if there were to be more in the future, they would be born from Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, and Golden Silkworm, not this woman. This was still not the main point. The main point was that he actually made a move against a 7th-step Supreme Exalt. Was he courting death? Even though he possessed an incomparably calm temperament, he was still panicking in his heart at this moment. Because of this, he could only retreat step by step in the face of Ling Han's storm-like attacks. The other 6 6th-step Empyreans were also shocked until their scalps went numb. They looked at Empyrean Deadfire in a daze, their hearts in a whirl for a moment. But it can't go on forever, can it? Greetings, my lord. They all bowed towards Empyrean Deadflame. Empyrean Final Flame looked at these people blankly. You guys were so fierce just now, and now you're acting so submissive. What are you trying to do? She said weakly. Why are you guys hitting Neo? Puffed. The 6-step powerhouses couldn't help but open their mouths wide. One of them even directly spurted out. Even the self-restraint of a 6-step powerhouse was not enough. Neo, which Empyrean would call himself that, especially one who was an undying and indestructible 7th-step Supreme Exalt. His image crumbled instantly. May I ask how I should address you, my lord? A 6-step powerhouse asked with cupped fists. Empyrean Final Flame immediately became interested. He puffed out his chest and said, Neo is dead fire. Dead fire? The 6 Empyreans looked at each other, clearly very puzzled. They had never heard of such a Empyrean before, let alone a 7th-step Supreme Exalt. It was impossible for an Empyrean to appear out of nowhere. Of course, those who came from the previous primordial world were exceptions. Wait, could this person be a Supreme from the previous primordial world? Yes. This was the most likely guess. Greetings, my lord. The 6 powerhouses bowed once again. Deadfire was very pleased with himself. He tilted his chin and looked left and right, very satisfied. The 6 powerhouses were even more puzzled. Was this really a 7th-step Supreme Exalt? But they had personally experienced how powerful this woman was. If that wasn't a 7th-step Supreme Exalt, then what was? They could only watch from the side. Ling Han clearly had a close relationship with this 7th-step Supreme Exalt. If she didn't say anything, how would they dare to deal with Ling Han? Was he tired of living? Speaking of which, when Ling Han unleashed his full power, Yu Furong wasn't his match. In addition, he had been injured by Deadfire's roar. Although his injuries weren't very serious, it would still affect his battle prowess. Under Ling Han's tide-like attacks, the effects were constantly magnified, making his disadvantage more and more obvious. Yu Furong couldn't help but be shocked. How long had it been? And he was already no longer Ling Han's match. If this continued, forget about avenging his son's death. Even he would die under Ling Han's fists. He hurriedly said, Fellow Taoists, why aren't you making a move? Are you really going to let this unfilial son act so viciously? The 6 powerhouses looked at each other, then at Empyrean Final Flame. But she didn't have any intention of speaking, so who dared to make a move? Did she think that a 7th-step Supreme Exalt was just for show? Ling Han's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. He had to kill Yu Furong within these 2 hours of explosive attacks. Otherwise, even if he used the 9 streams combination talisman again, the increase in his battle prowess would drop to more than 200 times. In that case, it would be very difficult to kill Yu Furong. After all, he was at the 6th step. Since ancient times, not many people could reach such a height. Which one of them wasn't a genius among geniuses, an overlord among overlords? Yu Furong was also deeply aware of this. He defended with all his might, not hoping to achieve anything, but hoping to survive these 2 hours. He took out his Empyrean treasure, which was a silver spear. As it danced, it transformed into a white dragon that possessed great power. Ever since he had reached the 6th step, he hadn't used his Empyrean treasure, because the increase in his battle prowess was negligible. But now he had taken it out, which showed how bad his situation was. Even if it was just a tiny increase, it was like a life-saving straw. How desperate was this? Ling Han let out a long howl. Old bastard, I definitely won't let you escape this time. Wang, he took out all the planes. And in an instant, more than 300 planes that were close to high level appeared. They illuminated the heavens, forming an indescribable pressure. Pooh! Yu Furong's movements stiffened, and he was instantly struck by Ling Han's fist, causing him to spit out blood violently. His internal organs also spat out, all of them shattered. My lord, please show mercy. Seeing that Yu Furong was really about to die, the 6 powerhouses finally couldn't help but speak up, begging Empyrean Final Flame for mercy. Chapter 2958. Absolute Flame tilted his head and looked at the 6 experts in confusion. Are you talking to me? It was Ling Han who was fighting. What did it have to do with her? Seeing Heavenly Venerate Enfire's appearance, the 6 powerhouses were also baffled. If he was willing to let Yu Borong go, he could just nod his head. If he didn't agree, he could either snort coldly or ignore him. But what's the point of looking at them like that? Teasing them? If it had been someone else, they would definitely have been enraged and slapped that person to death. But now they were facing a 7th-step supremacy. Even if they knew that the other party was teasing them, what could they do? Once one reached the 7th step, one could do whatever they wanted. Heaven could not suppress them, earth could not imprison them, and they did not need to care about anyone's feelings at all. Ling Han attacked wildly. Wung wung wung. He released all of his planes. Now that there was only one opponent, and he was suppressing him, he was not worried that Yu Furong would have the strength to destroy his plane. If that were the case, she would really be seeking death. This gave Yu Borong an indescribable pressure, and it caused his situation to become worse and worse. He had no choice but to seek help from his companions again. The 6 experts were dumbfounded. They were truly shocked by Ling Han. Hundreds of planes, what kind of concept is that? It had to be known that only 3 of them had nurtured a plane within their bodies when they were quasi-Empyreans, allowing their combat strength to surpass others of the same level. But only one of them. Previously, there were only 5 7th-step cultivators in the Frost Plane, other than their descendants and disciples. How could the others receive the 7th step's favor and open another space in their Dantian to accommodate a second plane? But even if there were such lucky people, such as Lin Yu Lian, Xian Chihu, and so on, how could they compare to Ling Han? Unworthy to the ends of the earth. Is this what insanity is capable of? The 6 of them were thinking. Could it be that frenzy was so terrifying? 7 steps could only open up space to accommodate one more plane. But frenzy could fit hundreds of them? My lord, Yu Borong is the main force in resisting frenzy. We only have 106th-step cultivators. How can we lose them here? A 6th-step cultivator bravely said to Empyrean Deadflame. Juehua tilted his head and said unhappily, "Why are you asking Nio? Nio doesn't know what you are talking about. You are so annoying, Nio hates you." The 6 powerhouses were shocked. Shibu said that they were annoying. Did that mean that he was going to make a move? They hurriedly retreated. Once 7 steps made his move, no one could stop him. Condensing the 6 types of intrinsic powers of the origin world. This power was indescribably powerful. It was simply impossible to resist. You guys! Yu Borong was furious. He was about to be beaten to death. But not only did his companions not save him, they even retreated and pulled apart the distance. Were they pig teammates? However, he didn't have the time to reprimand him. Ling Han's attacks were too violent, and it was obvious that he wanted to destroy him within 2 hours. His attacks were like a landslide, and when he punched out, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The entire plane trembled, and a terrifying energy storm was triggered. This undoubtedly made the battle even more dangerous. Not only did Yu Borong have to resist the direct pressure from Ling Han, but he also had to guard against the energy storm that could attack from below at any time. This naturally made his situation even worse, and he was in imminent danger. Of course, this energy storm was also fair, and it similarly put immense pressure on Ling Han. However, Ling Han had made up his mind to exchange injury for injury. He had the upper hand, and he would at most be heavily injured by the energy storm, but Yu Borong would die. The 6 powerhouses saw this, but not only were they unable to save him, they didn't even dare to open their mouths to plead for mercy. That was because Heavenly Venerable Juehua had already called them annoying. Who would dare to go against him? Bang! Yu Borong's left arm exploded from Ling Han's punch, and blood splattered everywhere. 6 steps was extremely powerful. Wherever the blood floated, it was as if it had been heavily hit, and it exploded. Ling Han also spat out a mouthful of blood. In order to heavily injure Yu Borong, he had also been hit by the energy storm. This was the price that he had to pay. It was as if he didn't feel anything, and his attacks continued. Yu Borong sucked in a deep breath, wanting to forcefully draw in the energy of heaven and earth, so that he could quickly regrow his arm. However, this was the void, and the 6 kinds of intrinsic energy were incomparably berserk. He sucked in a mouthful of it, and his face instantly turned red. He had originally been able to suppress this berserk energy, But he was currently heavily injured. Not only could this not help him, but it would instead cause his injuries to worsen. Old thing, I'll send you on your way, Ling Han said coldly. His fists furiously punched out, and his attacks became even more ferocious. Yu Borong gritted his teeth and stubbornly endured. He had cultivated to the 6th step, so how could his will be so easily defeated? Fight, fight, fight. The two powerhouses were both going all out. At this time, if Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief, then Yu Borong would be able to recover and escape with his life. But if Yu Borong took a breath of relief, then only death awaited him. Ling Han forced Yu Borong to continuously retreat. Planar energy suppressed him, and he punched out again, instantly sending Yu Borong flying. Boom! An energy storm surged out, smashing right into Yu Borong's body, heavily injuring him. Yu Borong groaned. Half of his body had exploded. This was caused by the energy storm and Ling Han working together. Even if he was at the 6th step, he was still extremely weak in this dangerous place. Ling Han howled and followed after him. He wouldn't give his opponent any more chances. He was going to use a series of attacks to completely finish off Yu Borong. The 6 powerhouses were all restless. Yu Borong was really going to die. Could they just watch as he died? Could they attack? A supreme being of the 7th step was standing right in front of them. Did they dare to? Just in this short period of hesitation, Yu Borong had finally reached the end of his rope. No matter how strong his will was, no matter how tenacious he was, it couldn't be used as food. He had been heavily injured, and half of his body had been blown away. This seriously affected his battle prowess. And Ling Han had even used a method that didn't care about his life. This wasn't exchanging injury for injury, but rather exchanging injury for life. Brat, you will definitely get your retribution. Yu Borong let out a roar of despair. He believed that Celestial Venerable Chong Yen and the other supreme beings of the 7th step definitely wouldn't let Ling Han off. Especially now that even the 6th step had been killed by Ling Han. The supreme beings of the 7th step would also put down everything and kill Ling Han at all costs. Otherwise, they would never have another chance in the future. You talk too much nonsense, Ling Han said coldly. He was merciless, and he punched out 30 times in a row, instantly killing Yu Borong. 6 steps dead. The 6 powerhouses were all cold and speechless. This fox mourned the death of a rabbit, and it made them all feel sad. Ling Han was too ruthless. The supreme beings of the 6th step were the main force against frenzy. The death of even one of them was incomparably pitiful, and it was a huge loss to the Frostfire Plane. Wang, the supreme beings of the 6th step were dead. Boundless life essence boiled, transforming into an ocean that surged towards Ling Han. Wait, why was there so little of it? Chapter 2960. My lord. Puff, a 6th-step cultivator, wanted to beg for mercy, but just as he opened his mouth, a bloody hole appeared in his chest. He wanted to speak, but all that came out of his mouth were blood foam. His eyes instantly dimmed. A 6th-step expert was killed just like that. Whether it was Ling Han or the remaining 5 experts, all of them were shocked speechless. The power of a 7th step was unimaginable. The eyes of the 6th-step cultivator were filled with unwillingness. He was already at the 6th step, and there were only a few dozen people stronger than him in the entire Yuan world. However, he had been killed in one strike. How could he be willing to die? Zhu Hu was unmoved, and there was only endless coldness on her face. It was as though she did not care about killing a 6th-step martial artist. 7 steps and below were all ants. Ling Han suddenly thought of a saying. Although they were all celestial venerables, they were invincible 7s, undying and indestructible. They didn't need to care about anyone. If they were unhappy, they could just kill them. The world was big, but it was no bigger than 7 steps. Go! The remaining 5 experts were terrified. So what if they were at the 6th step? In front of the 7th step, they were just meat on the chopping block. Zhu Hu was cold and beautiful, but she gave off endless murderous intent. She opened her hand, and suddenly, the 5 cultivators seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall. None of them could escape. They were only 1 step away, but it felt like they were separated by layers of mountains. The difference was greater than the heavens. The 5 experts all looked hopeless. It was obvious that absolute fire wanted to kill them all, and Chibu had the ability to do so. No matter how much they struggled, it was useless. Pooh, Juho was like a god of death. With a single strike, she blew up a level 6. Her methods were incredibly cruel and violent. Her slender hand directly pierced through the opponent's chest, not caring that her jade hand was stained with blood. Pa! Another 6th-step cultivator's skull was smashed by her. Blood and brain matter splattered everywhere, and a few drops even landed on her pretty face, causing her absolute beauty to carry a trace of bewitchment and cruelty. In front of the 7 steps, the 6 steps actually couldn't withstand a single blow. Ling Han knew that 7th step was powerful, but he never thought that the difference would be so great. It was no wonder that Zhou Heng and Chu Hao, who were only a step away from reaching the 7th step, were not taken seriously by anyone who had reached the 7th step. If they did not take this step, they would be trash. The remaining 3 powerhouses resisted with all their might, which 6th step Empyrean hadn't gone through many trials and tribulations to reach this step. Even if they were left with only despair, they would still fight to the last drop of blood. However, in front of Chibu, they were all slapped to death by a single punch or a single palm. After 6 strikes, the 6 experts were all killed. Absolute Fire's killing intent boiled. His dark red eyes stared at Ling Han coldly and mercilessly, as if he was looking at a corpse. Most of the life essence chi was absorbed by her, but there was still a lot that flowed towards Ling Han. The 6 powerhouses added together still had more than a single Yuborong. This made Ling Han feel like he had earned back. He quickly put away this strange thought, and also stared at Absolute Flame. Every single hair on his body was standing on end, and he was filled with nervousness. Sweat unknowingly flowed down his body like a stream, instantly drenching his clothes. Ling Han even thought that if Absolute Fire wanted to kill him, would he have the time to tear open the void and escape? This was also why he hadn't left earlier. He had been locked by Absolute Fire's divine decree. If he acted rashly, he would definitely suffer a lightning-fast attack from her. He couldn't take such a risk. This was the true strength of a 7th-step Empyrean. Ling Han sighed inwardly. He had originally thought that with his battle prowess of 6th step, even if he couldn't defeat a supreme like Empyrean Sundermount, he could still escape. But now, it seemed that he had been too naive. Absolute Fire didn't speak, nor did she make a move. She only stared coldly at Ling Han. Ling Han naturally didn't speak either. Now, no matter what he did, under the influence of his aura, he would attract the other party's attack. Since Absolute Fire hadn't made a move all this time, there was still room to turn things around. Thus, Ling Han didn't take the risk. Of course, if Absolute Fire attacked, Ling Han wouldn't just stand there and wait to be captured. He would definitely fight. In a moment, or perhaps an epoch, Ling Han lost his sense of time. He only knew that Absolute Fire's killing intent was finally starting to fade. Her eyes had returned to normal, and were no longer crimson like blood. "Who am I?" she murmured. Her eyes were fierce one moment, and clear the next, as if 2 thoughts were fighting. "Who are you?" Ling Han asked. He was truly daring to provoke the other party at this time. "Who am I?" Absolute Fire howled, her black hair dancing in the wind. Her figure shot into the sky. Pung pung pung. She directly smashed through the plane of this level. Along the way, she smashed out a large hole. He didn't know which plane this was, but all the upper planes were almost smashed through in an instant. She had already entered the void, and it was difficult to see her. Boom! An energy storm surged out of the hole she had smashed open, transforming into a heavenly waterfall. Ling Han hurriedly retreated. Absolute Fire could ignore this energy storm and directly pass through it with her flesh, but he couldn't. If he was swept up, he would definitely be severely injured. He left this place and found a place to first cultivate in seclusion, refining the life essence he had absorbed. Then, he released the Empress and Hunyeo from the Celestial Entertainer Inn. After explaining the situation to them, the 2 women were stunned. Who exactly is this Absolute Fire? Is it really a seed of madness that was planted in the last origin world? However, before it could erupt, it was killed with no means of retreat, and its trump card couldn't be used. Hold on. She calls herself absolute fire. There is only a horizontal line between fire and annihilation. And if annihilation is reversed, wouldn't it be annihilation? Annihilation was the name of madness in the last origin world. The three of them exchanged a look, all of them in awe. The last origin world had collapsed, and absolute fire might not have been prepared. So her spirit had been wounded by the power of the great collapse, and was like a blank piece of paper. But previously, she had absorbed life essence, and her instincts had been awakened, stimulating her, causing her to unleash her ferocious nature, and go on a killing spree. The reason why she didn't attack Ling Han was probably because she hadn't awakened her memories yet. She was still thinking about the good times she had with Ling Han. However, if Ling Han and the other two guessed correctly, when Absolute Flame regained her memories, the entire origin world would be her enemy. It was too terrifying. With the 7-step helper in frenzy, how much damage would he cause? The situation might not be that bad. Perhaps Absolute Flame was only agitated, and that's why he did some extreme actions, the Empress said. Ling Han slowly nodded. No matter what, I need to increase my strength and reach step 5 as soon as possible. Only then will I have the strength to fight against step 7. Even if he advanced 5 steps, he could only match up to 7 steps, because in terms of physique, 7 steps were undying and imperishable. They could only suppress and not kill, but he could be injured and could be killed. The two sides were not equal. Ling Han began to search for the origin stone veins again. After cultivating diligently, he felt an incomparable sense of oppression. End of this chapter. Chapter 2961. The death of 7 6th-step heavenly venerables would definitely cause a huge uproar. As expected, more 6th-step heavenly venerables appeared recently. Ling Han even sensed an indescribably powerful aura, which should belong to a 7th-step powerhouse. If heavenly venerable End Fire didn't show up to explain the deaths of Yu Borong, and the others would definitely be blamed on Ling Han. This would undoubtedly solidify the evidence that he was Madness's subordinate. Ling Han didn't have time to care. He kept searching for mineral veins and cultivating. Refining a portion of the life essence of the 7 6th-step Empyreans had also allowed his cultivation base to advance. However, if he wanted to reach the peak of the 4th step, he still needed too much energy. If he didn't have the support of the Great Medicine, the time it would take would be incomparably shocking. Ling Han searched for the spatial passageway to the lower planes, but he couldn't find it. Time passed quietly. He was discovered many times, so he was naturally hunted down. The most dangerous time was when he sensed the arrival of a 7th-step powerhouse. He could only tear open the void and leave. After taking a big detour, he returned to this place. Time flew, and 20 billion years passed quietly. Ling Han finally cultivated to the peak of 4th step. However, he didn't gain much from mining ores. He basically relied on his own bitter cultivation to reach this step. He couldn't help but sigh. Without the support of Great Medicine, his cultivation speed was really ridiculously slow. However, he finally reached the peak of 4th step. Great Medicine was useless to him now. If he wanted to advance to 5th step, he needed Red Great Medicine. Others only needed Orange Great Medicine to advance to 5th step, but he couldn't because his starting point was too high. Not to mention Red Great Medicine, he didn't even have Orange Great Medicine. He cultivated in seclusion again. 300 million years passed, but he didn't make any progress at all. If he wanted to rely on bitter cultivation to advance to 5th step, he might need 1 or 2 or even more epochs. Ling Han sighed. This was too slow, this wouldn't do. He believed that there were more great medicines in the depths of this plane group, and the Red Great Medicine definitely existed. However, the problem was that he couldn't enter before reaching 7th-step combat strength. This formed a paradox. Forget it. I'll go out and take a walk. Ling Han decided to return to the primordial world, to experience the mortal world, and change his mentality. Maybe he would be enlightened. Besides, he had been away for too long. It was time for him to go back and see what was going on in this world. He tore open space and quietly returned. Right now there should be countless people looking for him. Once he was found, the 7th step Supreme Being would definitely make a move. Therefore, Ling Han was very low-key. He changed his appearance and aura, not wanting to be recognized by anyone. Otherwise, his idea of going to the mortal world to gain experience would definitely fall through, and he would only be left with the fate of being hunted down. Both he and the Empress missed their children very much, and after so much time had passed, they should have gained many more generations of children. The three of them returned to the Xuanma Plain. As soon as they arrived, they noticed something different. The abundance of spiritual energy here, and the activity of essence particles far exceeded that of the past. It had reached a level comparable to the Frostfire Plane. The Xianemo Plane had leveled up, going from high to super high. Ling Han sensed for a moment, and sure enough, the seeds of the 9 high-level planes in his body had lost their connection to their original planes and disappeared forever. I wonder if the Frostfire Plane has fallen. Let's ask. They came to a city, entered a restaurant, and then listened to the loud chatter of the crowd. But these were all ordinary people, and could not possibly know too much about the overall situation of the world. Thus, the three of them quickly left the restaurant and went to search for a larger sect. They soon arrived at a sect. A great disciple recruitment competition was being held here. One after another, young people with great potential were displaying their talents. And on the stage, there were figures of the older generation observing, occasionally whispering to each other. Ling Han sensed for a moment, and directly dragged out a celestial king from the sect, asking about the current situation. Though celestial kings were not qualified to enter the foreign battlefields, they had no lack of understanding of the major events of the world. Under the pressure of Ling Han's aura, the other would answer all his questions. Furthermore, this was not a secret. Everyone knew, and there was no need to keep it a secret. True enough, the Frostfire Plane had already fallen. However, madness was currently devouring this plane, and needed a digestion period. In this period, madness naturally had no time to attack, and gave the origin world a rare time to rest and recuperate. Now various forces were stationed in the Xuanma Plain, and it was said that there were experts discussing counterattacking the Frostfire Plane. As the Frostfire Plane was a super high-grade plane, the plane core had indescribable value. As the plane collapsed, the core no longer had destructive power. If they could get their hands on it, they might be able to directly advance from the 6th step to the 7th step. An additional 7th step meant a little more hope for the origin world. Thus, even a venerable of the 7th step would act to create opportunities for others. Everyone was waiting for madness to almost devour the Frostfire Plane and expose the plane core. Then, they would take the opportunity to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. After hearing this, Ling Han couldn't help but be tempted. If he could get the core of the Frostfire Plane, it should not be difficult for him to advance to the 5th step, right? As long as he reached the 5th step, he would have the power of the 7th step. Even if he faced a 7th step or even madness, he would have the power to fight. Alright, I'll remember this. Ling Han asked again. Do you know where Ling Meng is? Ling Meng? The Celestial King was confused. No matter how Ling Han asked, the Celestial King didn't know what Ling Meng meant. Ling Han could only change the way he asked. What about the Ling family? Ling family? Ling family? The Celestial King finally remembered some information and said the location of a faction. Ling Han casually erased the Celestial King's memory. Otherwise, the Celestial King might guess something was wrong. Then Ling Han's identity would be exposed. The three of them set off towards the Western Desert Mountain. The Western Desert Mountain wasn't far. Otherwise, with the Celestial King's strength, it would be impossible for him to travel so far and know where the Ling family was. The Western Desert Ling family was a very powerful faction. The family had a 6th heaven Celestial King overseeing it. No celestial venerables? Ling Han didn't suspect anything. In the eyes of the world, Celestial Kings were the strongest. Celestial venerables rarely appeared in the world. Besides, the Celestial venerables had to continue building defense lines. Once madness completely devoured the Frostfire Plane, the cruel war would restart. They had to be prepared. However, A sixth heaven celestial king was really a little weak. He arrived at the foot of the western desert mountain. This was the mountain gate of the Ling family. All the areas on the mountain were classified as private property by the Ling family. No one was allowed to enter unless invited. Ling Han adjusted his aura to that of a celestial king. However, he was only at the fifth heaven. Greetings, my lord. There were 2 immortal palace tier cultivators acting as guards at the door. After discovering Ling Han, they hurriedly bowed respectfully. Ling Han's body was surrounded by 5 rays of light. This was the most obvious sign of a celestial king. Originally, this couldn't be imitated at all. However, there were too many planes in Ling Han's body. It was a small origin world in itself. Imitating a celestial king was naturally a piece of cake. Chapter 2962. Ling Han nodded. I want to see your patriarch. Please wait a moment, my lord. The 2 guards hurriedly nodded. One stayed behind to talk with Ling Han, while the other hurriedly flew into the mountain to report. Not long after, a celestial king came out to greet them, but he was only in the first heaven. This was a young man dressed in green, exuding an outstanding temperament. I am Ling Gaoyuan. Greetings, senior. This young man bowed to Ling Han. The Empress and Hunyo couldn't disguise as celestial kings, so they simply concealed their aura, roughly equivalent to ascending origin tier, and changed their exquisite appearance, so they didn't attract any attention at all, and were directly ignored by this young man. Ling Han looked at him. Surnamed Ling, so he was of Ling Jianshue's bloodline, but he didn't know which generation he was. His aptitude wasn't much. Ling Han sighed internally. It couldn't be helped, the bloodline would definitely become thinner as it was passed down. And there were signs from Ling Tianhua, the 4th generation. He was far inferior to Ling Jianshue and Ling Fifan, and basically couldn't advance into the celestial venerable tier. Thus, when it was passed down to Ling Gaoyuan's generation, it was even more hopeless to become a celestial venerable, and becoming a celestial king was already good enough. Ling Han nodded. I am Han Lin, passing by this place, so I came to pay a visit. Ling Gaoyuan was slightly puzzled. This was also a reason. However, the other was in the 5th heaven, so what he said was naturally what he was, and he had no right to refute. He wasn't afraid either. His father was in the 6th heaven, and there were 9 heavens in the celestial king tier, reaching the heavens with each step. So did he need to worry that this Han Lin harbored evil intentions? Those who come are guests. I believe my father will definitely be willing to chat with senior, please. His expression was respectful. He invited Ling Han up the mountain, and after entering an elegant guest room, he called for a servant to serve fragrant tea. Senior, please take a seat, and allow me to go and ask my father. However, my father is in seclusion, and may not be able to entertain senior these few days. No matter, Ling Han said with a smile. In any case, he had plenty of time. After Ling Gaoyuan left, Ling Han released his divine sense, sweeping the entire western desert mountain, and soon, he revealed an expression of surprise. There was not a single Empyrean here. Previously, he had only thought that Ling Jianshue, Ling Shi, and the others were living in seclusion. After so many years, the Empyreans had also developed the habit of keeping a low profile, so it was normal for them to not appear in the world. But no matter what, there should at least be an Empyrean guarding the base camp, right? Aside from Ling Jianshue and Ling Shi, where were the large black dog, the heavenly venerable original birth origin, the Rain Emperor, and the others? Ling Han was very puzzled. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. We have to find out. If it was someone else, with the anxiety in Ling Han's heart at this time, he would definitely capture Ling Gaoyuan for questioning. But this was his own descendant, so of course, Ling Han could not do so. Let's wait and see. He, the Empress, and Hunyo suppressed their impulses and stayed here. They ate and drank well every day as they waited for the 6th heaven celestial king to come out of seclusion. This celestial king was called Ling Feizhou, but no one knew the name of Ling Feizhou's predecessor, because Ling Feizhou had only moved here a few 100 million years ago. As for where he had lived before, no one knew. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. As usual, Ling Han woke up early, and walked one round on the mountain, comprehending the heaven and earth. There were planes in his realm, but every plane was empty, and had not nurtured any life. There was still a huge gap between this and the true origin world. Being able to create things, that was the true leap out of the heaven and earth, surpassing life and death. Frenzy could create things, though what it created were all monsters. This was something that no seventh-step cultivator could compare to. Ling Han was pondering this question. If he could create things, then his power would undoubtedly receive a great boost. Just look at the planar wars. The more living beings there were on a plane, and the stronger they were, the stronger the plane itself would be. In the past, the celestial realm and the foreign realm had battled for innumerable years. The reason why the foreign realm had been unable to obtain victory for so long was because there were many living beings in the celestial realm, and they had strengthened the power of their own plane. But creating things was too difficult. Ling Han comprehended the heaven and earth, and comprehended every blade of grass and tree on the mountain. Though they were incredibly weak, they were all living beings, and they were things that he could not duplicate. Xiao. A few figures streaked across the sky, and an instant later, their auras surged forth, enveloping the entire western desert mountain. These were 4 celestial kings, and the strongest had reached the 8th heaven, while the rest were all at the 5th heaven. Ling Han frowned slightly. These celestial kings were all filled with hostility. Were they here to cause trouble? Without him, that 8th heaven was enough to suppress the 6th heaven, and the Ling family would definitely suffer a loss. But now that he was here, surviving spawn of the Ling family, hurry up and come out. A loud shout rumbled like thunder. Ling Han was instantly infuriated. Surviving spawn of the Ling family. Surviving spawn. 4 seniors have arrived. Please forgive this junior for not going out to welcome you. Ling Gaoyuan flew into the sky and bowed respectfully to the 4 celestial kings. This made Ling Han feel dissatisfied. The other party had already sent a slap over, and you still took the initiative to put your face in front of them? But on second thought, the Ling family currently only had 1 6th heaven celestial king, so how could he have the confidence to do so? He suppressed his dissatisfaction, and killing intent grew in his heart. Did they really treat him as a traitor, and wantonly suppress his descendants? What about Lin Luo, Zhou Wu and the others? Why didn't they help take care of them? There's no need to pretend. Descendant of a traitor, why aren't you kneeling and accepting your punishment? Said a 5th heaven celestial king. He was dressed in a long red robe and had jet black hair. He exuded an elegant aura. However, when he said this, his tone was filled with intense disdain and condescension. Ling Han couldn't hold it in any longer. With a thought, the red-robed celestial king let out a cry of surprise, and immediately fell from the sky. With a bang, he crashed heavily into the ground, his entire upper body embedded into the ground. What was going on? The remaining 3 celestial kings were dumbfounded. Even Ling Gaoyuan was surprised. No matter how much the other party despised him, there was no need to use such a method, right? Ling Feizhou, is there any meaning in secretly bullying a junior? Said the 8th heaven celestial king, his voice rumbling. When Ling Gaoyuan heard this, he realized that his father had taken action. His face was filled with surprise. Could it be that his father had broken through? But he clearly didn't see the heavenly tribulation descend. So why did his father enter the 7th heaven without a sound? Scram! Ling Han said, his voice spreading in all directions. It was impossible for an celestial king to discover his location. A mere 6th heaven celestial king really knows how to boast. The 8th heaven celestial king snorted coldly. He struck out with his palm and slammed it downwards. An 8th heaven celestial king could easily raise Western Desert Mountain to the ground. Sir, why must you be so overbearing? A figure flew out from the mountains and struck out with a huge palm. This was Ling Feizhou. But how could a mere 6th heaven celestial king match the might of an 8th heaven celestial king? Ling Han shook his head and secretly flicked his finger. Boom! In the sky, the huge palm collided with the 8th heaven celestial king's attack. Both sides were instantly annihilated. Everyone was astonished. Chapter 2964. This kind of feeling was vague, and he could only determine the direction, but could not pinpoint the exact location. A large city appeared ahead, and according to Ling Han's estimation, his bloodline descendants were in this city. It seemed to have greatly shrunk the scope, but how big was the city? It was even many times larger than a star in the ancient realm, and he had to find a clan to do so. It was difficult. Thankfully, Ling Han was not an ordinary person, but a heavenly venerable, and more so possessed battle prowess of level 6. There were too many things that he could do. He inquired about the location of the Ling family. This city was called Anya City, and there were 7 Ling family in the city. Ling Han visited them one by one. What he wanted to do was very simple. He wanted to find a member of the Ling family, let out a bit of blood, and then sense it. If it was his bloodline descendant, there would naturally be a resonance, no matter how faint. No. He went to 5 clans in a row, and all of them were filled with anticipation. Yet he returned disappointed. The 3 of them arrived at the 6th Ling family. Among the 7 Ling family, this Ling family was the weakest, and the strongest was only a severing mundane tier. This could barely be considered a force. Otherwise, those who were not in the severing mundane tier were not qualified to form a force at all. Ling Duanyan, if you still have some self-awareness, then stop pestering Fairy Chung. You are not worthy at all. Before Ling Han had entered, he saw that there was a conflict nearby. There was only one person on one side, and he looked to be about 20 years old. His appearance was considerably handsome, but his cultivation level was only at the heavenly body tier. In the Xianemo realm, this was completely insignificant. The other side had much more people, a total of 7 people. The difference in cultivation level was very large, and there was also a heavenly body tier, but the strongest was at the severing mundane tier. The words just now were said by that severing mundane tier. This was a young man dressed in azure luxurious clothing, looking down at the only young man, Ling Duanyan. Ling Duanyan humphed, but did not cower in the face of a severing mundane tier. Whether I am worthy of CC or not has nothing to do with you. In any case, it has nothing to do with you. You. That severing mundane tier youth was instantly enraged, and he glared intently at Ling Duanyan, looking like he was about to attack. He really dared to do so because the strongest elite of the Ling clan was only a 3rd severance, and though he was a 1st severance, there was an immortal palace tier grand elder in the clan, so he could completely crush him. So what if he had beaten Ling Duanyan? Though he was no match for a 3rd severance, he could still leave calmly. Furthermore, what were severing mundane tier forces worth in front of immortal palace tier forces? They could only bow their heads in submission. Ling Duanyan said carelessly, "Dog ignores. Do you dare to have a battle with me at the same cultivation level? If you can defeat me, you can do whatever you want to me. How dare you?" Young Master Go's name is Go Li. A subordinate immediately chimed in from behind the severing mundane youth. Fine. A dog's reasoning will always be correct, right? Ling Duanyan readily accepted his advice. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. If this Ling family were the descendants of his bloodline, then Ling Duanyan really did resemble him in the past, and his ability to harm others was impressive. Go Li's gaze was cold. Why should I lower myself to fight with a nobody like you? Qingping, go and fight with him. All right. A young man who was similarly in the heavenly body tier walked out. He crooked a finger at Ling Duanyan. Come, I'll play with you. This person was called Lu Qingping, and he came from a small severing mundane tier clan that was attached to the Go clan. Thus, he naturally became Go Li's follower. Ling Duanyan clasped his right hand behind his back. I won't bully you either. I'll let you use only one hand. You! Lu Qingping instantly exploded in fury. You actually underestimate me. He immediately charged out. Shameless boasting, see if I don't beat you into dregs. Pung. After a few moves, Lu Qingping retreated, but he didn't walk back by himself. Rather, he was knocked to the ground by a punch and slid back. How is it? Ling Duanyan rubbed his nose, full of provocation. Even Ling Han nodded internally. This brat's strength was really not bad. His foundation was especially solid, and his future was very promising. Go Li instantly felt embarrassed and shouted loudly, Rulong, you go? Young master, go. Isn't this asking me to bully the weak? A tall and sturdy young man said with a smile. But while that was what he said, he had already walked out and stood in front of Ling Duanyin like an iron tower. Ling Duanyin couldn't help but show a solemn expression. This person was not in the heavenly body tier, but rather in the eternal river tier. In terms of cultivation level, he completely crushed him. He was very strong, and there were almost no opponents in a battle of the same cultivation level. But asking him to cross over a major tier to battle? That was too much of a stretch. It was completely impossible. Brat, if you can take 3 punches from me, I'll admit that you've won. The tall and sturdy young man moved and shot out a punch heavy and fast. Ling Duanyin couldn't possibly dodge at all and could only cross his arms in front of him to block. Peng struck by the punch, he staggered and involuntarily retreated 17 steps. He felt as if his chest was boiling and blood was already seeping out of the corner of his mouth. Not bad, taking a punch from me and actually still being able to stand, the tall and sturdy young man said with a laugh. Brother Rulong is famous for his iron fists. His fists have been soaked in spiritual medicine since he was young and fused with godly metal, so they are incredibly frightening. There are not many in the same cultivation level that can take a punch from Brother Rulong's iron fists. One strike is enough to break one's bones. Brat, quickly kneel and beg for mercy. A few young men behind Goli called out one after another, but there were also 2 who were more reserved. They crossed their arms, looking disdainful. Because they were stronger than that tall and sturdy young man, they naturally wouldn't mind. Come, take my second punch, the tall and sturdy young man said with a grin. Hold on. Ling Han spoke up and walked out. Previously, Ling Duanyin had spilled blood, and he was already sure that this was his descendant. Bullying his descendant, fuck. And who are you? A young man shouted at Ling Han with a foul mouth. Pa! The Empress moved and gave that person a slap across the air. The sound was crisp and clear, and that person spun a dozen or so times on the spot. Only then did he sit down on the ground, completely dumbfounded. He didn't die, naturally, because the Empress saw that Ling Han had no intention of killing him, and so only used a bit of strength. Otherwise, the Heavenly Venerable only had to release a bit of his aura, and everyone here would be shaken into bloody foam. Hee. Hunyao meanwhile laughed. Seeing that Ling Han and his group seemed to have a powerful background, Goli immediately asked in a low voice, Who are you? Who I am, you don't need to know. Ling Han said calmly, and beckoned at Ling Duanyin. Brat, come here. I'll teach you a few moves on how to defeat that ugly big guy. Ugly big guy. The tall and sturdy young man couldn't help but be so angry that smoke was about to come out of his nose. Though he was a bit sturdy, it had nothing to do with being ugly. However, Ling Han and his group immediately gained the upper hand with a show of strength, so he dared not act rashly and forcibly endured it. Ling Duanyin was very quick-witted. He didn't know exactly how strong Ling Han was, but he seemed to be very awesome. He said, Senior, there's no need to go through so much trouble. You can just defeat all of them in one go, especially that dog Neglectful. He's the most savage in human form, so you definitely have to give him a good beating. End of this chapter. Chapter 2965. Ling Duanyin. Goli immediately shouted. What are you shouting for? I'm right in front of you, and I'm not deaf. Ling Duanyin picked at his ears, looking really very annoying. Ling Han, however, smiled. He was being bullied right in front of his house, so what need was there to be polite? This brat had guts, and was also quick-witted, not holding back with his words. He really had his former glory, which he liked very much. I'll teach you for an hour, and guarantee that you can defeat this ugly big guy, Ling Han said. How about it? Watching others fight or fighting yourself, which is more satisfying? Senior, are you sure you're not joking? Ling Duanyin naturally did not believe that an hour could help him surpass the Eternal River tier. Was he joking? Ling Han smiled calmly. There is only one chance. You can choose to accept it or not. Ling Duanyin hesitated slightly, then suddenly gritted his teeth and bowed to Ling Han. Senior, please teach me. This brat was not bad. He was decisive, and not the slightest bit sloppy. Ling Han nodded and raised a hand. Stand up. He had never liked this kind of etiquette. Respect came from the heart, and not on the surface. He then looked at Go Li and the others. You guys wait for an hour. Go Li was naturally not willing to wait, but though Ling Han and the others did not show their aura, they had the upper hand. He could not catch the Empress's move, and knew that his strength was far from enough. Thus, they said to wait, and he did not dare to wait. Furthermore, he did not believe that in a mere hour, Ling Duanyin could really be reborn. Hey! Unless he had taken a celestial medicine. Ling Han casually took out a few pills and tossed them at Ling Duanyin. Eat them. There really were celestial pills. Ling Duanyin looked at these pale gray alchemical pills, and his heart involuntarily pounded. Kanchu, this appearance was too bad, right? Could it really be eaten? What if he ate it and had diarrhea? But seeing Ling Han's completely indifferent expression, as well as his strong desire to personally defeat the burly young man, he gritted his teeth and tossed all 3 pills into his mouth. He did not even chew, and directly swallowed them. Ha ha ha. Seeing this scene, Go Li and the others all laughed loudly. The higher the level of the pill, the more dazzling and extraordinary it would be. Of course, divine medicines were extraordinary. Those pills could also be considered precious medicines. Are you kidding me? They knew that they were not a match for Ling Han and the other 2. But bullying Ling Duanyin was not a problem at all. Ling Han pressed a finger onto Ling Duanyin's forehead. He did not need to use any mighty force at all. He drew upon the supreme regulations and accelerated the flow of time around Ling Duanyin. He was strong enough to become a heavenly venerable tier, and regulations were already ineffective against him. But Ling Duanyin was only in the heavenly body tier, so the acceleration of the flow of time was naturally effective. 2 million times acceleration. What does this mean? An hour had passed in the outside world, but over 200 years had passed in his world. Isn't that awesome enough? Ling Han did not directly increase Ling Duanyin's cultivation. On the contrary, he dispersed all of Ling Duanyin's cultivation, then rebuilt his foundation, and cultivated back step by step. In the outside world, time passed without anyone noticing. But Ling Duanyin knew what he had experienced. He could not help but be shocked. What kind of heaven-defying method did the senior possess to disperse his cultivation, rebuild his foundation, and rebuild his cultivation? He discovered that over 100 years' time had already passed quietly, but the movements of those people outside had slowed down to the extreme, as if time had stopped. This was a different flow of time. But Ling Han casually pointed, and did not use any formation, and accelerated his flow of time, by who knew how many times. And Go Li and the others actually did not notice at all. This ability was really freaking awesome. He had met an expert, a benefactor. He hurriedly retracted his divine sense, and focused on cultivation. If he missed such a good opportunity, there might not be a next time. This is the indestructible heaven scroll, memorize it well. Ling Han transmitted a divine sense, which rumbled in Ling Duanyin's mind. He was now already at the 6th level, so inheriting the indestructible heaven scroll was naturally a piece of cake. But whether Ling Duanyin could comprehend it or not was another matter. It could be said that it was difficult. He helped Ling Duanyin build his foundation and forge his godly bones and celestial body, possessing the highest regulations, and more so grasping the essential power of 3 origin worlds. To achieve this was still a piece of cake. An hour passed very quickly. Ling Han withdrew his finger and said, "Go fight." "Yes, senior," Ling Duanyin said extremely respectfully. Go Li and the others might not have noticed anything at all, but he was extremely clear on just how powerful this senior was. His achievements were practically unimaginable. Go Li and the others all smirked coldly. You guys really knew how to act together. Just by pressing a finger, you could create a super elite. Hee, really hee. Brat, come quickly, I'm already impatient from waiting, the tall and sturdy young man urged. See how I thrash you? Ling Duanyin shouted softly, and took the initiative to attack. Puny heavenly body tier, the tall and sturdy young man said in disdain. He clenched his fist, and punched towards Ling Duanyin. Pung, the 2 of them exchanged a blow, and an unbelievable scene appeared. Tung tung, both of them retreated a dozen steps. Ling Duanyin actually did not fall into a disadvantage at all. This Go Li and the others were all speechless in shock. How was this possible? How was this possible? A mere hour, and with just a press of a finger, he could make one's abilities completely different. Ling Duanyin was clearly still in the heavenly body tier, and had not improved at all. So how did he suddenly become so powerful? They all turned to look at Ling Han. This was naturally all because of Ling Han. What kind of being was this? The might of a single finger was actually so terrifying. At the same time, they were also filled with envy. Why did such a good opportunity not fall on their heads? Those few pills. Go Li and the others all came to a realization. Those must be celestial medicines, to be able to make one reborn. Perhaps foundation building saintly medicine. There is clearly no change in cultivation level, but his abilities have increased innumerable times. This is 10,000 times, 100 million times more precious than directly increasing cultivation level. How much one's cultivation level increased was how much. This was a one-time transaction, but strengthening one's foundation was something that would last a lifetime, and one could benefit forever. Again, the tall and sturdy young man charged over again. So what if Ling Han's power rivaled his? His iron fists had been tempered by godly metal and spirit medicines since he was young, and possessed the property of breaking through everything. Let him beat this brat to death. Pung pung pung, he brandished his fists and struck toward Ling Duanyin. Seeing the rain of attacks from his opponent, added with the fact that his strength had just increased, Ling Duanyin still subconsciously thought that Eternal River tier elites were people that he could not match at present. He hurriedly dodged, not daring to face them head-on. Go Li and the others all nodded in agreement. Heavenly body tier was only the heavenly body tier, after all. Ling Han shook his head. What's there to be afraid of? Don't you dare to fight? Ling Duanyin could not help but feel arrogant. He thought, didn't I also not fall into a disadvantageous position when I took a blow from the burly young man head-on? Come. He didn't retreat any longer, and threw out a punch to meet it head-on. Chapter 2966. Hong Hong Hong. Ling Duanyin and the burly young man continued to exchange blows, no longer retreating, and clashed head-on with every blow. Hee. Even if their power is about the same, Brother Long's fists are tempered with spirit medicine and godly metal, equivalent to a god tool. Clashing head-on with him is really an extraordinarily stupid decision. Just wait and see all his bones shatter. Haha. Go Li and the others all laughed loudly, not doubting the sturdiness of the burly young man's fists. Even Go Li had to admit that if they battled at the same cultivation level, he wouldn't dare to clash head-on with the burly young man's fists. However, to cultivate such an iron fist, who knew how much suffering one had to go through, and there really weren't many that could endure it. After exchanging over 100 blows in a row, someone's fist indeed bled, but it wasn't Ling Duanyin, but that burly young man. Ah! The burly young man screamed in pain. The surface of his fist was a bloody mess, and one could even see a strange depression. Obviously, his bones had been forcefully shattered in the exchange of blows. This Go Li and the others were all dumbfounded. They couldn't imagine, that iron fist like a dragon would actually be beaten so badly. Meanwhile, Ling Duanyin was filled with heroism, and with a battle cry, he launched a fierce counterattack. One had to know. Though he couldn't possibly comprehend the indestructible heaven scroll in one go, his body had been slightly strengthened by Ling Han's essential particles. So how strong could his physique reach? If he used the full power of 6 steps, he could even raise a mortal to the 9th heaven level in a short period of time. But the disadvantage of that was that he couldn't advance any further. Ling Duanyin had huge room for improvement, so Ling Han naturally wouldn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. Fight, fight, fight. The burly young man no longer had the courage to fight head-on. Being defeated in the field that he was most proficient in made his confidence fall to rock bottom, and he no longer had any fighting spirit. After a few exchanges, he was sent flying by a single punch from Ling Duanyin, completely defeated. Though the burly young man's defeat was only a matter of time, when they really saw him defeated, Go Li and the others still felt incredulous. Senior is really skilled. A young man walked out and respectfully bowed towards Ling Han. I am Kong Xing, and would also like to seek guidance from Ling Duanyin. He was also in the Eternal River tier, but he was much more powerful than the burly youth. He was almost at the peak stage of the Eternal River tier. For him to be so respectful, firstly, it was true that Ling Han's methods were heaven-defying, so he had no choice but to be careful. Secondly, he also harbored a selfish motive. If Ling Han was one of those powerful cultivators who had traveled the world, and had only helped Ling Duanyin out of a whim, would such a good fortune land on his head? Therefore, he behaved very respectfully, hoping that Ling Han would like him and give him a finger or something. Ling Duanyin looked at Ling Han. Right now his fighting spirit was very strong. Ling Han shook his head. Ling Duanyin's present physique was indeed strong, and it would be very difficult for even Genesis tiers to kill him. But power was his weakness. He definitely could not defeat Kong Xing. There was a whole major tier between them. I will teach you for another hour, he said to Ling Duanyin. Ling Duanyin was naturally overjoyed. It had only been an hour just now, and his abilities had already undergone a qualitative leap. If another hour were to pass, how impressive would he be? Many thanks, senior. He bowed again. Go Li and the others were all envious as they watched. They too wanted very much to bow before Ling Han and beg him to teach them a thing or two. Unfortunately, Ling Han paid them no heed at all, and only tossed out a single sentence. You guys wait for another hour. Ling Han tapped out a finger and pressed it on Ling Duanyin's forehead. Boom! An astonishing aura suddenly surged out from Ling Duanyin's body, seething and roaring. How could this be possible? His cultivation level is currently rising, and this speed is astonishingly fast. Go Li and the others all exclaimed in shock. This was really too inconceivable. Even if he had eaten a celestial medicine, he could still be so fierce? A little less than an hour passed. Quang! A sudden clap of thunder rang out between heaven and earth. Thunderclouds rolled, and the heavenly tribulation was about to arrive. He suddenly broke through. Go Li and the others murmured, looking as if they had seen a ghost. With a single tap of the finger, he broke through to the Eternal River tier. How could they believe this? Though those below the severing mundane tier could not be considered elites, even in the Xuanma plane, taking this step would at least take 100 years, right? For those with inferior talent, it would not be strange for them to take tens of thousands of years, or even millions of years. Go and undergo the tribulation first, Ling Han said. Ling Duanyin hurriedly answered, and went to face the heavenly tribulation. Quang, quang, quang. The heavenly tribulation descended, causing considerable injuries to Ling Duanyin. It's about time to stop, Ling Han said to the skies. We are in a hurry. Wang, the thunderclouds moved, and actually quickly disappeared. Fuck. Go Li and the others were really shocked. Who the fuck were you? You opened your mouth, and even the heavenly tribulation dissipated. How could they know that there was a power unique to the Xuanma plane in Ling Han's body? This could even develop into a second Xuanma plane in future, and his connection with the Xuanma plane was far greater than any other person. He had already reached the high level of regulations, and with such a connection, he naturally had plenty of face. The heaven and earth also had to be given. Thus, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. In any case, it had already struck a few times, so even if it was only symbolic, it was enough. Ling Duanyin was also stunned beyond comprehension. He was clearer than anyone else about Ling Han's strength, but when he saw this scene, he still could not help but be speechless. Awesome, too awesome. He felt that he was really lucky, actually being able to obtain the favor of an elite of this level. All right, go and fight. Ling Han waved his hand. Yes, senior. Ling Duanyin was even more respectful. He first bowed to Ling Han, and then walked towards Kong Xing. Kong Xing's first reaction was to not fight. Fuck in front of Ling Han. He did not even have the courage to stand. He was so scared that his legs had gone soft, so how could he still fight? But when he thought of the good fortune that Ling Duanyin had obtained, he gritted his teeth. He also wanted it. In this battle, if he performed outstandingly, Would he win Ling Han's appreciation, and thus give him a hand in passing? With this thought he leaped out. Come, let me experience it. The two of them immediately began to fight. They were both in the Eternal River tier. But one was in the peak stage of the Eternal River tier, while the other had just entered the Eternal River tier. In theory, the gap between them should be as wide as the sky, and there was no suspense about the outcome. But Ling Duanyin defied common sense. His power was only slightly inferior to Kang Xing's, yet his physique was invincible, as if it were divine metal. Only Ling Duanyin could attack, and did not need to defend at all. What use was that tiny bit of power advantage that Kang Xing had? After exchanging over 1,000 blows, he was also sent flying by a single punch from Ling Duanyin defeated. Who else? Ling Duanyin looked around, appearing very domineering. Go Li and the others all cursed in their minds. If it were not for their relationship with Ling Han, a mere heavenly body tier, there were at least 4 people here that could easily thrash him. Especially Go Li. Severing mundane tier elites did not need to move at all, and could kill him with a single thought. I too will experience it. Among Go Li's group, a young man stood out. He was in the Genesis tier, and was already a great saint. Ling Duanyin looked towards Ling Han. 1 hour. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.